A voice, and that voice is Channel Africa. It keeps you in motion, speaking, singing, questioning, rising. Wake up with Rise and Shine 6 till 9. Peter and Asanda as they bring you breaking news, sharp analysis, and the voices that shape the day. At mid-morning, we get on the move with Palisa and Benjamin, digging into the African lifestyle, people, and the things that make Africa smile. 12 till 1, Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, getting in-depth, powerful stories, and the perspective you won't hear anywhere else. The Upside, 1 till 4, live and real, with Tepuho Likweleni and Nompumelelo Ngubeni. Tame Ngubeni talks money, Africa in business, 4 till 5 p.m. 5 till 6, we put on a little bit more color. Vue d'Afrique with Joël Moteba. We go to East and Central Africa and find Darubinia Africa with I Am Shakif. Madapiri gives us some life. Zochitika, 7 till 8 p.m. Maria Mokumalo comes in 8 till 9. We get some useful knowledge. Kalodiscopia. 9 till 10. We take a look in Africa and beyond. Africa World Hour with Sipiso Makwetla. And we close it up with some love. The Hotlines with Shailen Dikumana. 10 till 12 p.m. on Channel Africa. Across borders, across time zones. On air, online. This is Channel Africa. Africa has a voice, and that voice is Channel Africa. It keeps you in motion, speaking, singing, questioning, rising. Wake up with Rise and Shine 6 till 9. Peter and Asanda as they bring you breaking news, sharp analysis, and the voices that shape the day.
And Shine, we're coming to you live from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. My name is Asanda Beda with Peter Ndoro in studio. And of course, you can tune in to DSTV Audio Bouquet 802. On OpenView, you can find us on 6 to 8. On www.channelafrica.co.za is also where you can find us. SABC Plus, you can find us on that app as well as on our live streaming platforms. At Channel Africa 1 is our handle across the various different platforms on social media. What we'll be looking at into this hour is former Zambian President Edgar Lungu's party, the Patriotic Front, saying it is ready to proceed with his burial in South Africa, and US President Donald Trump announcing a ceasefire in the war between Iran and Israel. Of course, more stories than those two will be coming up as we are with you for the next 3 hours. And thanks again for joining us. Let's head over to the news. Here's Jalani Tulongwepe with the details, and then Fikile Lingwati will give us sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. The army in the Democratic Republic of Congo says it has signed a new accord with neighboring Uganda aimed at boosting a joint military campaign against a rebel group, the Allied Democratic Forces. Over the last 3 decades, the deployment of Ugandan troops has often been controversial. Officials in Kampala say the focus has always been on defeating rebels. Interpol says cybercrime is increasing across Africa, accounting for over 30% of reported crime. The countries worst affected are South Africa, Kenya and Nigeria. The BBC's David Bamford has the details.
Cybercrime costs the world over $8 trillion a year. The latest Interpol report highlights the problems faced by African countries, many of which do not have an up-to-date legal framework or technical ability to confront the deluge of illegal activity. Interpol said online scams, ransomware and digital sextortion are constantly evolving. The introduction of artificial intelligence is exacerbating the problem. There have been some successes. 2 recent police operations in Africa, Serengeti and Red Card, resulted in more than 1,000 arrests, but the future looks challenging.
11 Nigerian states are signing up to a government initiative to promote ranching. Several of the states, particularly those in Nigeria's Middle Belt, have experienced deadly clashes between farmers and nomadic birds. Chanduko Ligege reports.
Earlier this month, over 200 people were killed and thousands displaced in Nigeria's Benue state in what President Bola Tinubu said was a land grab by herders. It was the latest in...
We do apologise for that incorrect soundbite. South Africa's Deputy Transport Minister Mkhuleko Hlengwa has emphasised the importance of the safety of seafaring vessels countrywide. He was speaking in Cape Town during an audit of the maritime sector. Last year, a fishing trawler, the MFV Lepanto, sank, claiming the lives of 11 fishermen. Hlengwa says too many lives are lost at sea annually.
Well, you'll recall that we're coming from a very difficult period of having lost fishermen at sea last year, the Lepanto, and we also had the Amano. Now, as a department, we directed SAMSA to institute an audit across the country, particularly of your smaller vessels, those 10 meters and below, with a particular focus to ensure that there's due compliance with standards, regulations and protocols.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has pushed back against the suggestion that Ukraine was being put on the back burner at a leaders' summit which starts today at The Hague. Invading Russian forces have continued their attacks in Ukraine as world attention turns to the conflict between the US, Israel and Iran. Rutte says NATO allies are not losing sight of what's happening in Iran.
Our support for Ukraine is unwavering and will persist. And we have, I can announce that now, new estimates showing that our European and Canadian allies have stepped up and have already pledged, where we originally would be able to announce 20 billion over the first 3 months of this year. It is now, they will provide over 35 billion euros of additional security assistance to Ukraine for the year ahead.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. Headlines at 6:30 for Channel Africa News. I'm Jolani Tulo Webe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Our sports headline, Banyana Banyana coach has stuck to the recipe that worked for her in 2022 when selecting her squad. And Maketa Vondrusova claimed her first title since winning Wimbledon 2 years ago. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
The rhythm of Africa, the pulse of the continent. This is Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Every time and every day, in fact, not every time, after the news, we take a look in terms of stories that have made headlines that you may have missed from yesterday, since it is Tuesday, and then that will also give us a lead in terms of developments in the world around us and within Africa in terms of those news stories we need to look for. So we start today's roundup with Zambia. Former Zambian President Edgar Lungu's party, the Patriotic Front, saying it is ready to proceed with his burial in South Africa in line with his family's wishes. This comes as South Africa's International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola has said a state burial in Zambia would be a more fitting tribute to Lungu's legacy and service to the nation. Kaeli Hlekumalu has more.
Lungu's family says they'll continue to seek peace and unity among Zambians during this time. The family has expressed its appreciation to the South African government for their respectful support to hold private funeral and burial in South Africa. Lungu's political home says they'll miss him.
It's up to the family. We or anybody can wish that ECO is buried in Zambia, but it's the family ultimately that has all the rights. And every effort to obviously get President HH and the family to a common agreement has fallen off. And from the party's perspective, we have all traveled now in South Africa, and indeed we'll bury our leader next few days.
The current conflict in the Middle East between Iran and Israel is set to dominate the talks at the G20 Sherpas meeting in South Africa. South Africa will host the 3-day G20 Sherpas meeting at Sun City from Wednesday until Friday.
An incredibly unprecedented time as the conflict intensifies in the Middle East between Israel and Iran. Iran has retaliated to Israel after it attacked its nuclear and military facilities since June 13th. The G20 countries are also concerned following the Trump administration's decision to impose sweeping tariffs with far-reaching implications for the global economy. For now, though, there is a pause, and this has created uncertainty.
Namibia's President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah has called for trust in business negotiations between the USA and the African continent from the outset. President Nandi-Ndaitwah addressed a panel discussion at the ongoing US-Africa Business Summit in Luanda.
For us really to achieve a win-win situation, we need trust between ourselves. The African people, the investors coming from anywhere in the world, including the United States of America, we need to trust one another, and we must work in true partnership where there is no one who wants to get more than the other, but to make sure that at all times the owner of the resources, who are the Africans, and the investors who are bringing the money, they all have a benefit from those resources.
Auditor Generals from G20 countries are set to gather in Johannesburg this week for a summit that will be focused on strengthening collaboration amongst supreme audit institutions. South Africa's Auditor General, Tsakani Maluleke, says that the summit will provide a platform for Auditor Generals to share insights and contribute to improving governance in their countries. Gloria's Sifako Musi picks up the story for us.
The SAI-20 platform came about as a response to the unprecedented disbursement of public funds during the COVID-19 pandemic, highlighting the urgent need for enhanced oversight and accountability. Auditor General of South Africa, Tsakani Maluleke, says this year's SAI-20 under South Africa's chairmanship will focus on 2 developmental themes, being unlocking and leveraging public infrastructure funding for equality, sustainable growth, and bringing improvement to the lives of citizens, and collaborative and integrative efforts for a future-ready workforce, bridging the skills gap in sustainable economic growth. The summit is expected to welcome approximately 20 heads of national audit offices from G20 member countries, along with invited international guests and key stakeholders from South Africa's audit profession and business sector.
That's how we come to the end of this Tuesday's edition of the Africa Roundup. And coming up on Africa Rise and Shine, we zoom into the East Africa region where we look at stories making headlines there. Speaking to journalist and leader at the grassroots journalism in Kenya, Dennis Beru will be Peter.
Zochitika ndi madaphiri kamlondola wazochitika pena paliponse.
Nduna wa zamalonda ku Malawi aletsa kampani yopanga shuga ya Irovo yomwe ndi nthambi ya Irovo Sugar Group Limited kuti isiye kutumiza shuga ku maiko akunja. Malingana ndi nduna ya zamalonda Vitumbuko Mumba, izi zithandiza kuti shuga yemwe yakusowa pamsika azipezeka. Ndiye pano ndili ndi George Muhangu amene ali mu mzinda wa Blantyre mu dziko la Malawi. Chimene chikupangitsa kuti shuga azisowa ndi chani?
Chomwe chikupangitsa kuti shuga azisowa ndichonena kuti panopo ili ngati off season ya makampani a Irovo Sugar Malawi, kunena kuti sakutha kupanga shugayi okwanira chifukwa akukolola. Ndiye akamaliza kukolola pameneno atayambeno sopano kugaya shugayi kuti azipezeka. Chinanso ndichonena kuti ma distributors amene akumakagula shuga kaya ndi ku Irovo kaya ndi kusalima shuga akumagulisa ku maiko akunja ngati Zambia, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Mozambique.
Zochitika ndi madaphiri lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Well, it's time now to take a look at some of the major stories making headlines in East Africa, from mass youth protests in Kenya to key military gains in Somalia and shifting political dynamics in Rwanda, Malawi and Tanzania. The region is abuzz at the moment with developments that could shape the region in the near future. And joining us, as always, from East Africa is a journalist and leader of the grassroots journalism Kenya, Dennis Beru. Dennis, thanks so much indeed for joining us. Habari yako?
Salama sana, Peter Ndoro. Hope you are doing well in South Africa.
Fiti sana. So let's start in Kenya. We're seeing reports of large-scale protests expected across the country, particularly driven by young people. What's been fueling this mobilization, and what are the protesters demanding?
Thank you so much, Peter Ndoro. We all know that it has been now 1 year since the young people went to the streets. That was in August, that was in June 2024, to protest the controversial finance bill. And as a result of that, we saw so many young people losing their lives on the streets. And tomorrow, which is now the 25th of June, it is now called the most anticipated Gen Z anniversary, where the young people will be marching on the streets to remember the young people who boldly went to the streets and they wanted the finance bill to be dropped by Parliament. And as a result of that, we saw so many of them being killed. And yesterday, the IMLU, that is Independent Medical, released a report saying that 63 lives were lost, and this is what young people they want to remember their fellow who died on the streets, demanding for the finance bill to be dropped. So there's a lot that is going on, the conversation, and there are a lot of tension because I remember last week during the protest in the city, we saw goons who allegedly were hired by politicians to make sure that these demos are not taking place.
All right. I mean, it's part commemoration and remembering, but there are a lot of current issues, aren't there? So I guess the protests are not just about the past, but very much about what's happening now, especially after we saw people dying in detention, human rights activists being detained unnecessarily.
Yes, this is just part of the broader issues between the citizens and the Kenya police. Remember, recently we've seen quite a number of cases where protesters are shot and killed. Last week on Friday, we had a protester who was killed by police, and this is now angering Kenyans to go to the streets. And I remember what now brings these young people to the streets is the recent death of a blogger and a teacher, Albert Omondi, who died in the police cells. So just quite a number of issues that are happening, and also things to do the political landscape, the pressure, economical status, the inflation is one of the reasons why we might see so many young people on the streets tomorrow, not only on the death of the Gen Zs who died on the streets during the demos in 2024.
All right, let's take a look at Somalia now. The Somali Armed Forces, with support from African Union Support and Stabilization Mission, have reportedly taken strategic areas to the south. I mean, there was a time where pretty much all that they controlled was Mogadishu and everything else was Al-Shabaab. How significant then are these gains in terms of security for the region?
Thank you so much, Peter. Remember the African Support and Stabilization Mission in Somalia that is awesome, announcing that the recapture of their key cities, that is the region of Beda and Anole, that was being controlled by the militia group, that is the Al-Shabaab. And the awesome, together with the Somalian armed forces, capturing the region that were being held by, or rather controlled by, Al-Shabaab is a big milestone to their war with Al-Shabaab, ensuring that there is that smooth transfer of security operation to the armed forces of Somalia. And remember, this was a three joint mission between AWSOM and Somalia armed forces to make sure that they drive out the Al-Shabaab from the region that were being predominantly controlled by Al-Shabaab, that is Shabelle. And as per the Africans or AWSOM operation commander, Semwanga from Uganda, saying that capturing Shabelle is actually, it was one of their major breakthrough to ensure that the people of Somalia are freed from the militia group that is Al-Shabaab.
And then in Rwanda, we saw Victoire Ingabire, opposition leader, being arrested. Do we know what charges that she's facing?
Of course, Ingabire, she is the main opposition leader in Rwanda. And remember, in 2010, when she came back from exile in Netherlands, after she ran out of the country on the allegations that she was part of she was involved in the 1994 genocide case, and she was jailed, but later she got that presidential pardon. But remember, she has been mentioned in the ongoing investigation where it is alleged that there are a group of the Rwandese who are planning to overthrow the government, and this is now one of the reasons why she has been arrested. And remember, when she was pardoned, Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, said that she is not yet off the hook, but she might also end up getting into jail. But remember, this is one of the the tricks that we normally see, especially when Rwanda approaches elections, where opposition leaders are being silenced. I remember during the last general election, Paul Kagame got over 90% of the votes, and she was seen as one of the competitors to President Paul Kagame's presidency.
So is there a feeling that this arrest is more political than anything else?
Of course, yes. People see it as it is a political or it motivated because Rwanda is about to go into elections, and being arrested means there is no other outstanding figure from the opposition who will now vie to contest against Paul Kagame, who has been in power for over 30 years.
All right, so let's shift focus and go to Malawi now. The ruling Malawi Congress Party says that it's open to formal alliances being formed ahead of the general elections in September. What might be behind this shift in strategy, do you think?
Yes, very interesting. MCP, which has now been in power through President Chakwera. And I remember it is one of the ways to ensure that the main ruling party, that is MCP, is trying to consolidate other small parties to ensure that they win 2025 general election. And some of the parties, the small parties who have been mentioned in these collaboration or partnership, or rather the merger, have not said anything in regards to the ongoing conversation to ensure that MCP, that is the ruling party, now merges to ensure that President Chakwera gets the maximum support in this general election. But remember, the opposition party, they see it as a threat, because trying to consolidate or bring these small parties to their fold is one of the ways to ensure that the MCP retains or wins 2025 general election.
Talking about elections, the African Union has deployed a pre-election assessment mission to Tanzania. What's the purpose of such a mission, and how is it being received locally?
Yes, of course, Tanzania will be heading to polls in a few months, and as part of that preparation, the African mission, which has now tasked the deputy president of South Africa to ensure that there is the country is ready for these polls. And these polls is part of the preparations to ensure that the elections are free and transparent. And remember, we are at a very crucial moment whereby the main opposition leader, that is Tundu Lissu, is still facing treason-related charges. But as per the African missions, of course, the Tanzanian electoral body, they are ready to conduct these elections that should be happening in October.
Tanzania's recent political reforms. Do you expect a freer, more transparent electoral process in 2025, or are there still many concerns from civil society groups, especially given what's happening to people like Tundu Lissu?
Of course, people are not sure whether these will be free and fair elections. The main opposition leader is in jail. Is facing charges. So now the opposition feels that these will not be free and transparent election. Remember, one of the reasons why Tundu Lissu was arrested, because he failed or he refused to sign the presidential election or the elections code. And the activist feels that this is not going to be free and fair because we've seen the political temperature in the country where opposition's leaders, politicians are being silenced by being arrested. And one of the opposition member of parliament was detained at the border of Kenya and Tanzania when he tries to come to Kenya to seek for medical attention.
All right, so interesting times in Tanzania for sure. I wonder, is there anything else happening in the region that we haven't talked about that comes to mind for you that's major?
Of course, yes. Here in Kenya, the 5 main suspects are linked to the murder of the teacher and blogger Albert Omondi. Now, DPP, Director of Public Prosecution, has okayed for their prosecution. This is after the officer commanding police station that this young man died, Bwana Samuel Talam, and one of the police officers who were in charge of the facility at that particular time, Albert, died. And 4 inmates, they'll be now face murder charges, and this is happening this week. So we are now keeping an eye on the same. Remember, the main suspect in this, the DIG, the Deputy Director of our Police, is still free. Is still a free man, despite him stepping aside. But young people still say, we want him. He's the main person here. We want him resign and be arrested. And this is the reason why these young people are going to on the streets tomorrow.
Right. Dennis, we're going to have to leave it there. Always great talking to you. Have a great week ahead, my brother.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's Dennis Beru, journalist and leader at Grassroots Journalism in Kenya, giving us a regional roundup and key developments from East Africa. It's 6:30, which means it's time for your news headlines. Here's Jwalane Tulo Ngwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, the army in the Democratic Republic of Congo says it has signed a new accord with neighboring Uganda aimed at boosting a joint military campaign against a rebel group, the Allied Democratic Forces. The 7th group of South African troops returning from the SADC peacekeeping mission in the DRC has arrived at the Bramfisher International Airport yesterday afternoon. And finally, US President Donald Trump has announced on social media that a complete and total ceasefire between Iran and Israel had been reached and would begin in the early hours of this morning. I will have details on these and other stories at 7 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
At 32 minutes past 6 Central African Time, let's find out about South Africa's female soccer team. The Banyana coach saying here that she's sticking to the recipe that worked for her in 2022 when selecting her squad. What is that recipe? Fikile Lingwati will tell us.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you. Good morning, Asanda, and good morning, you guys. Let's start off with football news. Indeed, the coach of the South African women's football team, Banyana, Desiree Ellis, has stuck to the recipe that worked for her in 2022 when Banyana won the Women's Africa Cup of Nations title for the very first time. She has named 3 captains in her 26-player squad for this year's edition of the tournament to be played in Morocco from the 5th to the 26th of next month. Midfielders Refilo Jane, Amukhelang Mudau, as well as defender Lebohang Ramalepe will share the responsibilities. Jane was also one of the co-captains in 2022.
Honored again. It's such a privilege to be selected as one of the leaders of the team. And with the experience that I've gained over the years being in the team, it's important that I pass on the baton, that I also share that experience with the upcoming players and with the other captains. It's not easy to be the leader in the team, But when we work together, when we share the same vision, the same goal, then everything becomes.
South African football side Mamelodi Sundowns utility player Thapelo Morena is upbeat heading into their final Group F clash against Brazil's Fluminense at the FIFA Club World Cup, following their impressive performance against Borussia Dortmund. The Betway Premiership champions are one of the most talked about teams at the tournament, following the display in a pulsating 4-3 defeat to the German Giants at the TQL Stadium on Saturday. But Downs now need to beat Fluminense if they are to progress into the knockout stages, something Morena believes they can pull off if they iron out their errors.
I think we're gonna give our all like we gave today and try and convert the chances that we create. I think some of us players we watch the games, and to be honest, we go each game as it comes, and now the focus is changing to them because the focus was on Dortmund. So from today onwards, we just review our game and fix what we have to fix for the next game.
Now tennis news. Marketa Vondrusova claimed her first title since winning Wimbledon 2 years ago after she beat Chinese qualifier Wang Jinyu in the Berlin Open final. 25-year-old Czech has struggled with injury over the last year but put that behind her to win 7-6, 12-10 tie-breaker, 4-6 and 6-2. She saved 6 set points in a tight first set tie break but came through that to take the opener. 23-year-old Wang had seen off 4 top 20 players to reach her first ever tour final, and she showed great resolve to get a break in the second set and level. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fida Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
And it's time now for your business news. As we say good morning to Tabiso Lehuko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. It's Nosipho Zuma this morning. In your business news this hour, the High Court in London has ruled that Shell PLC and its former Nigerian subsidiary can be held liable for historic oil pollution in the Niger Delta. Now, in this case, the Bell and Okhala communities in River State said that Shell-owned infrastructure caused thousands of years of environmental degradation and are seeking compensation and asking for the companies to clean up the damage caused by the spills. Shell had argued that claims older than 5 years were time barred, but the judge disagreed, ruling that failure to clean up the pollution could amount to an ongoing legal breach. Shuabu Adres, an economist and managing director at Timeline, explains how the oil spills have impacted communities in River State.
The damages done by the oil spill is gargantuan by nature. When you have a riverine community, what do they do for their livelihoods? Basically, they fish. So they catch fish and they catch, other marine-related animals for their survival. So the moment there's an oil spill, the entire maritime environment, the entire area is polluted, and the animals in the sea are dead. And then therefore, the communities living around those areas, they are not able to perform any economic activity.
Malian tax officials have opened Barrick mining offices in the capital Bamako under a new interim administration. This comes after Barrick's Lulu Gongoto gold complex was shot in mid-April over alleged non-payment of taxes in a dispute over mining revenues. The Malian government, a shareholder in the mining complex, has signaled its desire to reopen the complex amid record high global gold prices. Sources say that if reopened, the mine could bring in revenue worth at least $1 billion over the next year. South Africa has signed a $1.5 billion loan agreement with the World Bank aiming to overhaul its transport and energy infrastructure and reignite the country's economic growth. South Africa's National Treasury says the development policy loan aims to unblock key infrastructure bottlenecks which have severely hindered the country's economic growth. The financing should also limit rising debt service cost as it carries more favorable terms than commercial borrowing. Finance and Economic Development MEC of the Gauteng province in South Africa, Lebogang Maile, together with professional consultant firm EY, has released the first ever provincial municipal economic review and outlook. Now, the report is a tool aimed at assisting municipalities to better allocate budgets and prioritize economic development based on reliable data. Speaking at the launch at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, Maile says the report provides detailed analysis on the state of the economy at the municipal level.
Because that's where a lot of things take place. That's where investors want to be located. That's where service delivery is administered. That's the first point of contact between the citizens and government. So it's important that it was important that we go into every municipality and look at the different economic activities.
And finally, German industrial lobby group BDI says the German economy is set to contract more than previously expected in 2025 as U.S. tariffs weigh on exports. The U.S. was Germany's biggest trading partner in 2024, with two-way goods trade totaling $288 billion. BDI is forecasting a 0.3% contraction in 2025. In January, BDI had forecast a 0.1% contraction but flagged that changes to U.S. tariff policy might impact the export-driven economy further. The contraction in 2025 would mark Germany's third consecutive annual decline. Your financial indicators: one US dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 547. In Botswana, it's 13.33. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 56, and in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 09. The BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 51. Russia is 78 rubles 39. India is 86 rupees 49. China at 7 yuan 18. And in South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 99. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,353 and platinum at $1,294 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $69.86 a barrel. Now, for any business news stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipho Zuma.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
Did you know that the 19 member countries of the G20 are divided up into 5 groups comprising a maximum of 4 countries each? Most of the groups are formed on a regional basis. That is, countries from the same region are usually put in the same group. Only Group 1, which consists of Australia, Canada, Saudi Arabia and the United States, and Group 2, which consists of India, Russia, South Africa and Turkey, do not follow this pattern. Group 3 includes Argentina, Brazil and Mexico. Group 4 includes France, Germany, Italy and the United Kingdom. And Group 5 includes China, Indonesia, Japan and the Republic of Korea. That's our G20 fact for this Tuesday, the 24th of June.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
Right, let's take a look at this next story now, which is the G20 again, G20 Sherpas. And the current conflict in the Middle East between Iran and Israel is set to dominate the talks at the G20 Sherpas meeting in South Africa's Northwest Province. South Africa will host the 3-day G20 Sherpas meeting at Sun City from Wednesday until Friday. Now, the country's Sherpa and Director General Zane Dango is set to chair a third meeting of the Sherpas. Now, South Africa's presidency has placed an emphasis on solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Bonolo Maribe has more for us.
An incredibly unprecedented time as the conflict intensifies in the Middle East between Israel and Iran. Iran has retaliated against Israel after it attacked its nuclear and military facilities since June 13th. Director of the Middle East Studies Forum, Professor Shadam Akbarzadeh, elaborated on the United States' role in the conflict.
I think what the United States has done is to really play according to the Israeli agenda of bringing about not just a destruction of Iranian nuclear facilities, but implementing and instigating a regime change. The ultimate objective of Netanyahu in relation to Iran has been regime change. He's made it very clear that he doesn't tolerate the Islamic regime in power in Iran, sees it as an existential threat, and the United States is simply playing along with that.
In the G20, the Sherpas are the leaders of each country who take their discussions and agreements to the final summit. Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, has called on these powerful economies to lead in finding consensus in a fractured world.
There is a lack of vision, a lack of leadership, a lack of the capacity of leaders to mobilize their peoples and to come together in order to be able to address the enormous challenges we face. Climate, the problems of conflict, and the dramatic inequalities that generate poverty and hunger in so many parts of the world.
The G20 countries are also concerned following the Trump administration's decision to impose sweeping tariffs with far-reaching implications for the global economy. For now, though, there's a pause, and this has created uncertainty. South Africa's G20 Sherpa, Zane Dango, elaborated more on this.
We believe that we're going to have to now look at a similar principled approach on what are the principles underpinning international legal frameworks around fair trade. How do we rescue the global trading system? And this is coming through. So we'll probably have to look at what can we salvage through emphasis on what holds us together. And what holds us together is the rules as they are now. We know that they must be reformed.
Meanwhile, the second G20 Foreign Ministers meeting will be held in New York later this year on the margins of the UN General Assembly High-Level Week. Bonolo Maribe, SABC News, Johannesburg.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
South Africa's municipalities are in a dire situation because of financial pressures, weak financial control, corruption, and a lack of adequate skills. To address this, government is reviewing the 1998 local government policy that determines how municipalities are managed. The minister leading this department says a one-size-fits-all approach will not work, but a different and appropriate strategy must be developed for the country's 257 municipalities. Dimakazo Lishoro has the details.
Of the 257 municipalities, only 99 received unqualified opinions and 41 municipalities achieved clean audits. And out of 8 metros, these are Category A cities in South Africa, only one got a clean audit, that is the city of Cape Town. The city of Johannesburg has one of the biggest budgets across the continent, but it failed to produce quality financial statements, pointing to a lack of skills. The shocking state of municipalities has left them unable to provide basic services like waste removal, water and electricity, and have been beset by service delivery protests. Velenkosini Hlabisa, the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, bemoaned the state of South Africa's municipalities, saying it leaves much to be desired.
We know better the state of the most of our municipalities, which leaves much to be desired. We also know that the public holds the opinion that the majority of municipalities are not doing well. Local government is where policies become services, promises become infrastructure, and governance become tangible. Local government is at the coalface of service delivery and the closest to the people. It is the sphere that must be strengthened. The geographical locations and the funding model are at the heart of the challenges in most of our municipalities. That is why our engagement throughout the process of review, one size fits all, will not be a solution. The questions that we must engage is why the situation is like this. To fix our municipalities, what needs to be done, when, and by whom.
He is spearheading a process to develop a new model of making municipalities work. His department has formulated a white paper to replace the 1998 one to explore the best way to make municipalities functional and fit for purpose.
Year after year, the audit outcomes show that few municipalities get a clean bill. There is a heavy reliance on consultants when it comes to the compilation of the annual financial statements, yet many municipalities end up with bad results on audit outcome to an extent of disclaimers and adverse outcomes. A number of municipalities constantly fail to spend MIG and other grants allocation. Some of our municipalities are not viable as they have no revenue base for collection. As a result, they are classified as distressed, and some of them are literally bankrupt.
Auditor General Zakane Maluleke, who also took part at the event, stated that the previous white paper on local government was fantastic, if only it had been implemented.
I urge us to engage courageously on what are these barriers. Because when I read the 1998 white paper, if only the 1998 white paper had been implemented, we would not be here today. So the question I want to ask is, what are these barriers that stand between us and doing the things that are in the current white paper? Because if we do not confront them, the review process into a new white paper will lead us into a space where we currently are anyway. The 1998 white paper was fantastic. It's good to review it, but that must be followed with a very bold and courageous assessment and recommitment to implementing it. And implementing it, as I see it, is going to take the political parties genuinely thinking about whom are we deploying to take on the roles and responsibilities in the municipal space.
The public has until next Monday to make their contributions. For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakatso Leshoro in Johannesburg.
The Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS, has entered into economic development with three of its development partners, Spain, Germany and the European Union, as it deepens its efforts to ensure adequate security and governance. Now, the agreement signed in Abuja, the capital of Nigeria, ahead of the 67th summit of the Authority of the Heads of State, are worth over 150 million euros to be provided by the development partners and managed through a number of flawless checks and balances so that the impact will be felt in the areas where it is most needed. Channel Africa's correspondent in Nigeria is Collins Nosa Atonhegbe. He reports now.
The agreement signed ahead of two important gatherings of the regional body, the Youth Development and the 67th Summit of the Authorities of Heads of States and Government of Member Nations, attracted 100 million euros from Spain, while Germany and the European Union will jointly give the balance of 50 million euros on equal shares. The specifics were reached after an arduous discussion where the modalities that will enable citizens of ECOWAS to feel the impact of the planned projects were explained by the president of the Regional Bodies Commission, Omar Toure, during the signing of the agreement at the ECOWAS headquarters in Abuja. Toure noted that in the past, much attention and resources was directed towards holding seminars and workshops, leaving so little for the provision of relevant infrastructural development that could impact on the people within the region. He called for a reduction of such activities and greater attention to be given to projects implementation.
Let us focus on delivery. Let us focus on concrete results on the ground. Let us reduce workshops. Let us reduce trainings. Let us reduce validation activities, validation workshops. It beats the imagination of all of us to see the amount of resources we dedicate to training and overtraining. I think we need to be frank as partners and focus on delivery on the ground. We should not reduce these partnerships to workshops, and workshops.
Speaking of our country's relationship with development efforts in West Africa at the occasion, the Spanish ambassador to Nigeria, Maria Valesco, whose country is to provide the 100 million euros of the budget's fund, noted that ECOWAS has shown the desire to grow and overcome the challenges of insecurity and constraints of development. She commended the regional body for the continued effort and says the agreement being signed between it and the West African body will go a long way to making sure that the expectations of the people of West Africa are satisfactorily completed.
Today, ECOWAS stands as a powerful example of this long-term vision. In a world facing growing uncertainty, this region continues to pursue its vision of a peaceful and prosperous area governed by strong institutions that uphold fundamental freedoms and promote inclusive and sustainable development.
Germany, on its part, expressed the belief that regional integration will promote economic development and political stability, among other requirements that will help to promote peace and prosperity. The German envoy, Dorothy Janetz Wenzer, says her country has been of tremendous support to ECOWAS over the years and will continue to give necessary assistance that would promote regional stability and good governance.
Germany has continuously supported ECOWAS and its member states in this process, and we believe that regional integration promotes economic development, political stability, inclusive societies, and environmental protection, amongst other things. Hence, we are honored to support ECOWAS Vision 2050 on building a citizen-centered community for peace and prosperity.
The fund will help ECOWAS in the drive to ensure even economic development, promote intra- and inter-Africa trade, and deter insecurity, which has been a hallmark of the region for some years now. Meanwhile, the 67th Summit of the Authorities of ECOWAS Heads of States and Government, which opened in Abuja at the weekend, has ended with numerous protocols that will promote the greater regional integration, commitment to peace and security, and regional trade with a view to promoting and actualizing the purpose of the African Continental Free Trade Zone. Sierra Leonean President Julius Bale was elected the new chairman of the regional body, taking over that responsibility from Nigeria's Bola Tinubu after his 2 terms on the seat. From Lagos, I am Collins Nosa Atohengbe for Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
In this episode of Channel Africa Conversations, Peter talks to Dr. Tulisile Buddha, an academic, author, and an expert in indigenous knowledge systems. Join us for a compelling discussion on preserving African languages and traditions in the digital era. Dr. Tulisile unpacks the role of educators, explorers, and how technologies like AI can support cultural preservation, and challenges us to rethink how we honor African heritage. You can find the episode on YouTube, SABC Plus, and on our website, channelafrica.co.za. This episode is a must-listen for educators, creators, and change makers across the continent. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Vue d'Afrique avec Joël Mouteba.
Alors peut-on considérer cette décision comme un désengagement durable des États-Unis vis-à-vis du développement africain ou s'agit-il d'un simple réalignement stratégique?
Bon, ça peut être les deux à la fois. Donc, au lieu de donner de l'argent à la Banque africaine de développement pour partager en vrac, ils préfèrent maintenant donc cibler les pays partenaires en Afrique. Ça, c'est pour le réalignement stratégique. Alors, et aussi, ce n'est pas un désengagement durable, mais je pense que dans les 2 ou 3 prochaines années, il veut d'abord remettre de l'ordre dans ses affaires.
Vue d'Afrique. Du lundi au vendredi de 15h à 16h, temps universel.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
As we make our way to the next and the second hour of Rise and Shine, let's take this moment to thank the team. On our economics update is Nosipho Zuma. On our social media is Nomalanga Butelezi. On technical production, we have Francis Musina. And on production is Tlangiwe Mabaso, Joey Likhodi, Pumuzo Ramakadza. On news is Jalane Tulongwepe. And our sports update are brought to you by Fikile Lingwati.
Yes, indeed. It is 7 o'clock Central African time. So much to look at in this coming hour, and we'll be going all over the continent, and more details about that after the news with Jalani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. 3 Kenyan policemen have been charged with the murder of an online activist whose death in custody prompted protests. The officers appeared in court in Nairobi along with 3 other people. Joey Likhodi has the story.
Kenya's public prosecutor has recommended that 2 police officers who were on duty the night Albert Ojwang died in their custody and their commander face murder charges. The other accused are inmates who were in detention at the Central Police Station in Nairobi on the same night. An autopsy found that Ojwang had been assaulted, contradicting an earlier police report that claimed he died from self-inflicted injuries. His death has sparked public outrage in Kenya as it marks 1 year since the deadly protests led by Gen Zs opposed to tax hikes.
The army in the Democratic Republic of Congo says it has signed a new accord with neighboring Uganda aimed at boosting a joint military campaign against a rebel group, the Allied Democratic Forces. Over the last 3 decades, the deployment of Ugandan troops has often been controversial. Officials in Kampala say the focus has always been on defeating rebels. The 7th group of South African troops returning from the SADC peacekeeping mission in the DRC has arrived at the Bromfish International Airport yesterday afternoon. The group of 255 soldiers will begin the demobilization process at Tempe Military Base in Bloemfontein in the Free State Province. So far, 5 groups have completed the demobilization process. The last 2 groups are expected to arrive today as part of the phased withdrawal of the SADC mission. The SANDF's Major General Godfrey Tulare.
The staff that is facilitating the members that are coming back are going to come separately outside of the 2 flights that are remaining. That will be a separate arrangement. You recall that there still is some logistic that must take place. As we have indicated initially that there is some equipment that must come back, which is currently in Tanzania, but that equipment is going to be shipped to South Africa. So you still need the bodies that are going to be doing all this other administration.
Interpol says cybercrime is increasing across Africa, accounting for over 30% of reported crime. The countries worst affected are South Africa, Kenya and Nigeria. The BBC's David Bamford has the details.
Cybercrime costs the world over $8 trillion a year. The latest Interpol report highlights the problems faced by African countries, many of which do not have an up-to-date legal framework or technical ability to confront the deluge of illegal activity. Interpol said online scams, ransomware and digital sextortion are constantly evolving. The introduction of artificial intelligence is exacerbating the problem. There have been some successes. 2 recent police operations in Africa, Serengeti and Red Card, resulted in more than 1,000 arrests, but the future looks challenging.
US President Donald Trump has announced on social media that a complete and total ceasefire between Iran and Israel had been reached and would begin in the early hours of this morning. The post came mere hours after Iran had fired missiles at a US military base in Doha, projectiles that were intercepted by the Qatari state's air defenses, causing no deaths and casualties. Iran's foreign minister has since also taken to social media to announce that no agreement on a ceasefire had been reached, but appeared open to the prospect. Sharon Rice reports that despite Trump's announcement, missile barrages continued between Israel and Iran into the early hours.
President Trump's announcement was approached with some skepticism given how soon it came after an Iranian missile launch against a US military base in Qatar. Trump said the ceasefire would begin around 6 a.m. South African time. He then stated that on the assumption that all went well, he wanted to congratulate the two countries on having the stamina, courage and intelligence to end what he referred to as the 12-day war. Iran's foreign minister Sayed Abbas Araghchi posted later that there was no agreement on any ceasefire or cessation of military operations, but that Iran had no intention of responding provided the Israeli regime stopped its illegal aggression by 4 a.m. local time Tuesday in Iran.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2 711 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Webe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headlines, Super Falcons of Nigeria played to a goalless draw against Portugal in their WAFCON preparations, and Mexican boxing legend Canelo Alvarez promises that the Crawford bout will be one of his best. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
The rhythm of Africa, the pulse of the continent. This is Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
South Africa's International Relations and Cooperations Minister Ronald Lamola says that a state burial in Zambia represents the most fitting tribute to honor the former president Edgar Lungu's legacy and service to the Zambian nation. Lamola met with the Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema in Lusaka in Zambia, and this comes as Lungu's family has indicated that it wants to bury the former Zambian leader in South Africa. Lungu passed away earlier this month after receiving treatment at a Pretoria hospital. Monolo Meriba has the story.
The family of the late former Zambian president, Edgar Lungu, wants the sixth Zambian leader to be buried in South Africa. International Relations and Cooperation Minister Ronald Lamola has gone to Lusaka as the presidential special envoy as the bitter feud between Lungu's family and the current Zambian government continues. The minister's spokesperson, Crispin Piri, says that this is a sensitive matter.
In reaffirming the South African government's position, Minister Lamola emphasized that a state burial in Zambia represents the most fitting tribute to honor former President Lungu's distinguished legacy and service to the Zambian nation. Concurrently, Minister Lamola acknowledged that the legal obligation to respect the expressed wishes of the late former president's family are also of primacy.
Lungu's family says they will continue to seek peace and unity among Zambians during this time. The family has expressed its appreciation to the South African government for their respectful support to hold a private funeral and burial in South Africa. President of the Patriotic Front, Miles Sampa, says that the political party will miss him.
Yeah, turn of events, obviously very saddening and emotional. It's going towards 3 weeks now, but thank God we're getting to the burial day. It's unfortunate that clearly the family and the government, or President HH, the state, have not come to a common agreement. The government did not do or wanted to do what was not agreed by the family.
Meanwhile, among the leaders who have been buried outside their countries and their bodies have never been repatriated is former Congolese strongman Mobutu Sese Seko, who was laid to rest in Morocco in the 90s. Bonolo Maribe, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now to Kenya, where public anger is boiling over following the death of blogger Albert Ojwang in police custody and the recent police shooting of a street vendor during protests. 3 officers have been charged over Ojwang's death. For more on the public response, the legal proceedings and growing calls for police accountability, we're joined by Channel Africa's Nairobi correspondent Alex Kiari. Alex, how are you on this Tuesday?
I'm very fine, Peter and Asanda. How are you?
We're good, thank you very much. Let's go straight into it. Can you tell us what's happening now with the officers and civilians charged over Albert Ojwang's death?
Actually, the issue, as you just mentioned, is about the public anger because members of the public and all other human rights organizations have been calling for the prosecution and a fair look and approach at the whole issue and the exclusion of the Deputy Inspector General of Police, Eliud Lagat, is the one that is raising even more questions because they expect that him having allegedly ordered the arrest of the late Ojwang makes him a bigger prime suspect in the whole murder case. But for now, the anger is being driven by the fact that only the small fish is being fried, and I'm talking about the head of the police station where Ojwang died, and the sentries who are involved in the whole thing, together with the civilians who were allegedly hired to assault him in their police custody. So that's exactly how it is, and the fact that another hawker or a street vendor was killed in the open at point blank range by a police officer during the last Tuesday's protests makes it even more annoying to members of the public and those involved in pushing for accountability on the part of the security agencies in the country.
The conflicting reports in terms of how Ojwang died, the police first said that Ojwang hurt himself, but the autopsy said otherwise. How has this affected how people see the police in Kenya?
Actually, it's just justifying the long-drawn anger directed at the police and the state agencies involved in security issues, because this is not the first time that suicide has been used as a way of masking police killings, and especially those people who die in custody. I remember that around 12 years ago, a British citizen died in police custody in the coastal region, and he was also said to have died through suicide. And so many other cases have been raised. And as we speak right now, we had a case of another young person who was killed last Friday during protests. And it was actually captured through a CCTV camera of the police officer shooting directly into the crowd. So this adds to that anger that has been mounting for quite a while and directed towards the police who are said to be involved in extrajudicial killing of citizens in the country who are unarmed, who have not resisted arrest, and those who actually have no legal basis to die because of standing up for their own rights or just being arrested over issues that cannot actually constitute a death sentence in any way. So it's a very, very, very disconcerting situation in the country. And as we speak right now, another a blogger has been arrested. Actually, it was abducted allegedly last week, and is still yet to be found. And all these things, police have been denying involvement. Now, with the whole situation now unraveling, it seems that the police really have a lot to answer to the court of the public opinion.
Well, how have they answered in terms of why this particular blogger was arrested and the reasons given?
A studious silence, and sometimes a feeble apology from the Inspector General of Police, but largely it has just been silence and pushing and pulling back. And as we speak, still the independent police oversight body is still complaining about resistance and lack of cooperation from the police, which it is investigating over these deaths. And so far, there is that bigger conspiracy, allegedly, that people are suspecting so, of trying to cover up for those people who are involved in these extrajudicial killings of innocent citizens in the country.
On the sentiment in terms of police and how they're being viewed by Kenyans, and central to this particular case of Ojwang is Kenya's Deputy Police Chief Eliud Lagat. As you mentioned, 8 days ago, he decided to step down until investigations into Ojwang's death had been finalized. A move that further angered Kenyans who felt that he shouldn't just step aside, he needs to resign completely. Was this enough in him showing an offer of support in the matter?
Actually, the most interesting thing is that he did appear before the independent police oversight body that was investigating him on the same, but his appearance was shrouded in a lot of cover-up and mystery, and actually, up to date, we do not know the contents of the statement that he wrote or he submitted to the body. So there seems to be a coordinated approach in trying to shield him from justice, because they know very well that they might need him. And that is exactly why Kenyans are angry, because stepping aside and resigning are two different things, because it means that by stepping aside, he could be brought back to the same position or be reassigned another role in the government. And having not answered to the allegations or to the charges facing him, that clearly tells you something about the culture of impunity that is deep-rooted in the country and most of the countries in the region.
The President's William Ruto's statement that his government would protect citizens from rogue police officers, did this do anything to regain the public's trust?
Unfortunately, the President has lost trust. Very few Kenyans now take his word, because he did promise change after the June 25 protests last year. We saw nothing of the sort. He has been promising and actually apologized for the deaths and abductions, and they're still going on as we speak right now. He has actually ordered police to respect human rights in the country and civilians who are protesting, and actually this has been happening. As I said, last Friday, a young man was killed in the outskirts of Nairobi, and this in itself has drawn no belief and trust in what the president has been telling Kenyans, because they all say that it's all about public relations and trying to appear like he's a good person, but deep down, he does not respect the law and does not actually ensure that the people who work under him in his government face the law as it is required, especially in terms of respecting institutions of governance in the country.
So what's the latest on the situation of Boniface Kariuki, who was shot during the protests? Besides the PR exercises, what are they saying specifically about his case?
The Kenyatta National Hospital, where he's admitted, released a statement and said that he had undergone, I think, 6 more surgeries after the one that he underwent immediately after being admitted, after being shot. But so far, we have not had anything from the government, no condemnation from the state, and there's no officer who has been brought to book apart from the 2 who were arrested. And beyond that, we do not know anything about what's happening over here. And all that we heard about the family of Boniface Kariuki was that Kariuki is in a critical condition or situation, and he might or he risks being in a vegetative state. And there is claim in the streets that the government could be waiting for the protests tomorrow to end and then maybe reveal his true state of the situation. But so far, the bill is rising. The family is calling for support from Kenyans, but the government has not taken any responsibility to the same, especially in terms of managing his medical situation and treatment.
What are human rights groups and foreign embassies saying about this? What's going on? And there's now cause, as you say, for a total shutdown and growing protests.
Actually, the various embassies in the country, the Finnish embassy, European Union, and British embassies have also did release statements condemning police brutality. But currently, the biggest fear that has actually been in the streets right now as we speak is that there are plans to disrupt and cause chaos during the shutdown protests that are happening tomorrow. And actually, if you read today's Standard newspaper, and most of, I think 4 more newspapers have already alluded to this, they have named and shamed some politicians and the activists who are involved in this grand plan to use goons and other militias to disrupt and cause chaos during the protests tomorrow. And so far, the young people, the Gen Zs, are vowing to go to the streets as planned, and clearly they have their own plans to counter these alleged criminals who are being unleashed to them to stop them from recording the protests, from being part of the whole project, and actually being seen to be subverting the government. But we wait to see, because this is one of the biggest plans we are focusing on tomorrow as a media.
Yeah, we wait to see, and thanks again for your insights, Alex. We'll be getting in touch.
Thank you very much, and have a good one.
Thanks. Alex Kiari is Channel Africa's Nairobi correspondent, talking about intensifying protests action there in Kenya against the death of blogger Albert Ojwang. Now we're hearing there's another blogger who was arrested. Information is not forthcoming on his arrest either. And then also the death of the shooting rather, of the street vendor during those protests. That story keeps developing. And stay with us here on Africa Rise and Shine.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628. The Morning Switch Weekend. With the Shy Guy.
Mazuka Wanji Nonse, Zukani, the Shy Guy, a Morning Switch.
Have you ever listened to a song and then it gives you goosebumps? Cause it takes you way back in the 80s. My goodness. Yay! Woo! Hey, baby. You hear Yvonne Chaga Chaga there. I wanna talk to the DJ. And then the DJ goes like, hey baby, I've got you on the other side. Huh? There were no WhatsApps then, right? There were no sliding in the DMs at the time. Oh man.
Your weekend mornings are activated with the Shy Guy on the Morning Switch. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Tensions remain high in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, where a new military cooperation agreement has been signed between the DRC and Uganda. Now, the deal aims to intensify joint operations against the Allied Democratic Forces, or ADF, which is an armed group accused of massacring civilians in northern Kivu and Ituri. The operation, codename Suja, renews a partnership that has yielded mixed results in the past. But critics say that the involvement of Uganda raises flags, especially in light of ongoing allegations that Kampala has backed the M23 rebel movement and another destabilizing force in the region. So will this new pact restore security or deepen mistrust in the region? Well, for an update from the ground, we're now joined by our Goma correspondent, Jimmy Shukrani. Jimmy, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Peter.
So, Jimmy, what does this agreement between the DRC and Uganda actually involve? What are the key operational changes under Operation Suja?
Yes, you know, at a long time, the Operation Suja was just beginning since where the DRC has just entered in the East African community countries which are just located in Eastern. So the DRC and the Ugandan leaders have just signed this agreement. It was in 2021, where the UPDF, the Ugandan People's Forces, UPDF, have just entered on the Congolese soil. So it was not very clear about the situation which is happening in Eastern DRC, because this operation could only take the part of the North Kivu. It means Beni, Lubero, and the city of Butembo, where they were looking some terrorists of ADF, which killed the people in that part of the North Kivu province. But according to the situation and according to the communique which the Congolese government have just sent to the in a press release, they said in order to put end to this terrorism, they must just sign an agreement which will take wherever way the ADF, the Allied Democratic Forces, which they have origin from Uganda, they are operating on the DRC's ground. So this maybe will help the DRC to put end to this terrorism. And according to the government of Congo, this maybe will help the people in Ituri. It means the Operation Sugaa will not have limit in the North Kivu, in the Beni, Lubero, and Butembo only, but they are going to go so far and take the control of the province of the Ituri. You know, Ituri also until now is controlled, is under control by the Congolese army, and they took this decision just in order to help the Congolese army to fight against the Allied Democratic Forces which are operating in that area of the eastern part of DRC.
Do we know what the situation is like on the ground at the moment in Beni and Ituri, particularly those areas still under the ADF control?
Yes, ADF don't control the whole province because, as I told you, ADF is controlling just a party. It's not at all to say maybe ADF is going to take a whole province. It's only in a national park, and they do something to enter in the city in Beni just to kill people. And this may be, it will be one of the agreement, the important agreement, because the Ugandan army, the UPDF, know very well ADF, how much ADF is operating differently from the Congolese army, FARDC, who is just fighting against the terrorism, but they don't know very well the operating murder of the ADF. So, sorry, this will help maybe the FARDC also to be in touch on this situation, because 3 or 4 and 5 years where ADF is operating in the eastern part of DRC without the intervention of the Ugandan army, it means there was something like a majority in operation. You know, since M23 have just begin operation in the eastern part of the DRC, the Allied Democratic Forces also have just begun, and it's a problem to the local population. But the Ugandan army also, in his communique after the assignment of this agreement, the Ugandan army, represented by General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, the chief commander of the UPDF, told to the press that this is the first agreement which they are signing, and he promised the Congolese authorities that they are going to put end to this terrorism because earlier democratic forces ties its origin in Uganda, so they have to help their neighbor, the DRC, to put end to this terrorism in order to help people to recover peace and everlasting security.
What's the humanitarian situation on the ground in the region, particularly in Beni and Ituri, as we've been talking about?
Yes, Beni and Beni and Ituri are areas until now controlled by the government of Kinshasa, and the non-governmental organization sometimes they just try maybe to go there in order to help people who have fled from the Goma city, from Bukavu, from Masisi, Ruchuru, and other territories in North Kivu, because until now, Beni is the actually capital of the North Kivu province, and the provincial assembly, the whole provincial institutional, they take their office. Their office are in Beni, so the humanitarian situation is not so full, not to accomplish the basic necessities of displaced people who are in Beni and Ituri, but maybe, and now they are recovering this humanitarian situation. They are finding help because they are MSF who is there. There are other organizations which try to help displaced who were fled from Goma to Beni and Ituri. So the humanitarian situation is trying maybe to be not criticizing, but in the way of being maybe ameliorating the situation, Peter.
And that's where we'll leave it, Jimmy. Great talking to you. Thanks so much indeed for that update.
Thank you so much, Peter.
That's Jimmy Shukrani, who's our correspondent in the DRC, in the city of Goma, which is under the control of the M23 rebel movement at this time, talking to us about this ongoing cooperation between the DRC and Uganda. It's 7:30. It's time for your news headlines. Here's Jwalani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, 3 Kenyan policemen have been charged with the murder of an online activist whose death in custody prompted protests. The 7th group of South African troops returning from the SADC peacekeeping mission in the DRC have arrived at the Bromfish International Airport yesterday afternoon. And finally, the status of a ceasefire between Israel and Iran is unclear. Hours after it was announced by US President Donald Trump, Israeli emergency services say 3 people have been killed in Iranian strikes. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Now let's find out what's happening in the world of sports. Here's Fikile Lingwati with the latest.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
We begin with football news. The Super Falcons of Nigeria put in a resilient performance to hold Portugal to a goalless draw in a friendly encounter played in Lisbon on Monday evening. Despite both teams failing to find the back of the net, the contest provided plenty of positives for head coach Justin Madugu, whose side looked organized at the back and increasingly dangerous going forward. The game kicked off with the Super Falcons donning their away colors and immediately asserting their presence. The opening 20 minutes saw both sides feel each other out, with neither able to carve out a clear-cut opportunity. After a goalless first half, the intensity ramped up in the second period. Nigeria started to grow in confidence, pushing further up the pitch in search of a breakthrough. Despite 5 minutes of stoppage time, neither side could find the winning goal and the match ended in a hard-fought 0-0 stalemate. The result extends the Super Falcons' unbeaten run in 2024 and gives Madugu more to ponder ahead of the team's next friendly against Ghana's Black Queens on the 29th of June in Morocco. South African football side, Mamelodi Sundowns utility player Tabela Morena is upbeat ahead of their final match against Brazil's Fluminense at the FIFA Club World Cup on Wednesday, following their impressive performance against Borussia Dortmund. The Betway Premiership champions are one of the most talked about teams at the tournament, following their display in a pulsating 4-3 defeat to the German Giants at the TQL Stadium on Saturday. But Downs now need to beat Fluminense if they are to progress into the knockout stages, something Morena believes they can pull off if they iron out their errors.
I think we're gonna give our all like we gave today and try and convert the chances that we create. I think some of us players we watch the games, and to be honest, we know each game as it comes, and now the focus is changing to them because the focus was on Dortmund. So from today onwards, we just review our game and fix what we have to fix for the next game.
On to rugby news. Today marks 30 years since the South African national rugby team won the Rugby World Cup at Ellis Park in Johannesburg when they beat New Zealand 15-12 in the final. The victory became significant because it was the first sporting success for a newly democratic South Africa. The win was said to help unify the country and give the Rainbow Nation a feel-good moment to lean on for years to come. The significance of the 1995 World Cup is not lost on the incumbent and first black Springbok captain, Siya Kolisi.
I was for it, but obviously I've seen videos and I've seen the impact that it's done, not only in rugby but in South Africa in general. We all know. I think that's why people look up to the team or look to the team so much because of what happened in 1995, and I think it also started the winning for South Africa in difficult circumstances, and it also showed the spirit of South African people, especially when the one game was going to get cancelled, how people find ways to make sure that the field was right for people to play.
Now, finally, boxing news. Mexico's undisputed super middleweight world champion Canelo Alvarez promises his title bout with Terence Crawford in Las Vegas on the 13th of September will be one of the legend's best. 34-year-old became a sole possessor of all the title belts at the weight for a second time when he beat IBF champion William Skull by unanimous points decision in Riyadh last month. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Let's get our second business news update for the morning as we say good morning once again to Nosipo Zuma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. In your business news this hour, the High Court in London has ruled that Shell PLC and its former Nigerian subsidiary can be held liable for historic oil pollution in the Niger Delta. Now, in this case, the Bile and Ohala communities in Rivers State said that Shell-owned infrastructure caused thousands of years of environmental degradation and are seeking compensation and asking for the companies to clean up the damage caused by the spills. Shell had argued that claims older than 5 years were time-barred, But the judge disagreed, ruling that failure to clean up the pollution could amount to an ongoing legal breach. Shelby Adres, an economist and managing director at Timeline, explains how the oil spills have impacted communities in River State.
The damages done by the oil spill is gargantuan by nature. When you have a riverine community, what do they do for their livelihoods? Basically, they fish. So they catch fish and they catch, other marine-related animals for their survival. So the moment there's an oil spill, the entire maritime environment, the entire area is polluted, and the animals in the sea are dead. And then therefore, the communities living around those areas, they are not able to perform any economic activity.
Malian tax officials have reopened Barrick Mining Office in the capital Bamako under a new interim administration. This comes after Barrick's Lolo Gongoto Gold Complex was shut in mid-April over alleged non-payment of taxes and a dispute over mining revenues. The Malian government, a shareholder in the mining complex, had signaled its desire to reopen the complex amid record-high global gold prices. Sources say that if reopened, the mine could bring in revenue worth at least $1 billion over the next year. South Africa has signed a $1.5 billion loan agreement with the World Bank, aiming to overhaul its transport and energy infrastructure and reignite the country's economic growth. South Africa's National Treasury says the development policy loan aims to unblock key infrastructure bottlenecks which have severely hindered the country's economic growth. The financing should also limit rising debt service costs as it carries more favorable terms than commercial borrowing. Finance and Economic Development MEC of the Gauteng province in South Africa, Lebgang Maile, together with professional consultant firm EY, has released the first ever provincial municipal economic review and outlook. The report is a tool aimed at assisting municipalities to better allocate budget and prioritize economic development based on reliable data. Speaking at the launch at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, Maile says the report provides detailed analysis on the state of the economy at a municipal level.
Because that's where a lot of things take place. That's where investors want to be located. That's where service delivery is administered. That's the first point of contact between the citizens and government. So it's important that it was important that we go into every municipality and look at the different economic activities.
And finally, German industrial lobby group BDI says the German economy is set to contract more than previously expected in 2025 as U.S. tariffs weighs on exports. The U.S. was Germany's biggest trading partner in 2024, with two-way goods trade totaling $288 billion. BDI is forecasting a 0.3% contraction in 2025. In January, BDI had forecast a 0.1% contraction, but flagged that changes to U.S. tariff policy might impact the export-driven economy further. A contraction in 2025 would mark Germany's third consecutive annual decline. Your financial indicators: $1 US in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 547, and Botswana is 13.33. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 56, and in Zambia it's 23 kwacha 09. The BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 ruble 51. Russia is 78 rubles 39. India is 86 rupees 49. China is 7 yuan 18. And in South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 99. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,353 and platinum at $1,294 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $69.86 a barrel. Now, for any business news stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosi Pozoma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa. Channel 628. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa. The Morning Switch Weekend with the Shy Guy.
Mwazuka wanji nonse, Zukani, the Shy Guy, a Morning Switch.
Have you ever listened to a song and then it gives you goosebumps? Cause it takes you way back in the 80s. My goodness. Yay. Cool. Hey, baby. You hear Yvonne Chaka Chaka there. I wanna talk to the DJ. And then the DJ goes like, hey baby, I've got you on the other side. Huh? There were no WhatsApps then, right? There were no sliding in the DMs at the time. Oh man.
Your weekend mornings are activated with the Shy Guy on the Morning Switch. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
7:44 Central African Time. Let's take a look at this story now. The Sahel region of sub-Saharan Africa, they continue to suffer from the effects of increased political instability and amplified geopolitical tensions, among others. According to the 2025 Global Terrorism Index, or GTI, published by the Institute for Economics and Peace, the region accounted for 51% of global terrorism-related deaths in 2024, up from 48% in 2023. The report says the Sahel also accounted for 19% of all worldwide terrorist attacks in 2024, and Burkina Faso remains the most affected country in the region. To discuss this, we are joined on the line by Steve Kilelea, founder and chairman of the Institute for Economics and Peace. Steve, thank you for joining us and welcome to Rise and Shine.
Thank you. So yes, certainly when we're looking at sub-Saharan Africa, what we find is that the global epicenter of terrorism is actually based in the Sahel. But if we look at the overall sub-Saharan Africa, and there are 44 countries we measure there, only 13 of them had a death from terrorism. And in fact, if we look at half the countries, 22 of them, there were no deaths recorded from terrorism over the last 5 years. But what we do see, where the epicenter is situated in the Sahel, we've got Burkina Faso. That's the country which is suffering from the most deaths. That's about 21% of all deaths globally. But it was an improvement on last year. There were less deaths. There were 1,532. But we would caution about the number of deaths being a bellwether of it being improving, because we noticed with Niger, it had a 60% drop 2 years ago, and then the 2 following years increased substantially. So to date, they have the highest number ever.
So let's also touch in terms of the background on the Institute for Economics and Peace and the work that you do.
So the Institute for Economics and Peace is a global organisation. It has offices headquartered in Sydney, Australia, but offices in Nairobi, New York, Brussels, The Hague, Mexico City, and we're currently setting up in the Philippines. And what we do is we with focus on metrics to measure peace and then to ascribe economic values to changes in peace. Two major reports, they're the leading reports in the world in their area, the Global Peace Index, which we recently released, and the Global Terrorism Index, which we're discussing now.
All right, so we have a bit of points in terms of what you found, but how is the Global Terrorism Index compiled?
Well, it's compiled, but we use a set of data which looks at all the various terrorist attacks which have done around the world. And the data set itself goes back about 18 years now, and I think we've got all up over 130,000 different incidents which are coded within it. And what we do is we break it down into 4 different areas which we calculate. That's the number of attacks, deaths, number of injuries, and also the number of kidnappings as well. And we bring them together into a composite index with different weighings for each of those indicators, obviously deaths having the strongest weighing. And then what we do is we take it back over 5 years. So in the year of an attack, it accounts for 51%, following next year 26%, 13.7%, and etc. And the reason for that is because the lingering effects which happen from terrorism, because they traumatise communities, and that then has an ongoing effect through those communities.
So we discussed some of the main findings, but what are the primary drivers of terrorism have you found?
Oh, it varies. It's generally it comes down to a whole series of issues. So, look, if we're looking up in, let's say, the Sahel, a lot of it's really complex. So you've got a lot of social issues. You've got economic issues as well. Very, very low per capita incomes. You've got poor governance from the governments. They don't really have control over their areas. You've got polarisation, which you can see with the fighting between different ethnic groups, as you see between farmers and herders. You've got state security abuses, which then aggravate things as well. You've got the pastoralist conflicts. Then you've got transnational jihadists involved as well. And so I think one of the key things, and then you've also got international actors involved. So it's a very, very complex set of circumstances.
You also talk of lingering effects. So what happens in a long term and maybe a spillover from the original points mentioned?
Right. So if we start, well, maybe get more precise. So we're looking and going up into what, let's say, the Sahel. And what we can see is the number of deaths have increased by 10 times since 2019. A large part of that is because of international jihadists getting involved. So the 2 key ones are JNIM and Islamic State of West Africa. But JIM is on the increase. So we can see the number of deaths have risen by 43% over the last year. Islamic State for West Africa, the number of deaths are down. And so a lot of it is dealing with the interested in capturing resources. Quite often these groups come in and they find a local issue, local grievances, then they take the side of one side and then flame it up and then use it to sort of quite often capture the resources, particularly gold. You've got this large gold belt running through Burkina Faso, Niger and Mali. And so a lot of the time it's about capturing them. But the way the groups operate is they don't actually buy the gold themselves. What they do is they extract money by allowing people to mine the gold, and usually it's groups of individuals rather than an organised organisation. Then they charge the money to be able to transport the gold through the regions, and they do similar sorts of arrangements for guns and drugs as well. And so then they also impose taxes on top of that.
Burkina Faso remains the most affected in the region, as you mentioned before. So what can this be attributed to? Does it mean that those factors you mentioned are worse in Burkina Faso?
Yes, most definitely. Yes, most definitely. I think there's a number of different things going on there. Well, if we look at it, what we can find is that the 9 of the 20 worst attacks globally for terrorism actually occurred in Burkina Faso. And if we looked at the 6 major attacks, 3 of them were in Burkina Faso. At this stage, with ECOWAS pulling out, Burkina Faso are now turning its back on many of the African organisations. It is, however, picking up support from Russia, and China's got steadily improving its influence in there as well. That's particularly related to exploration rights for gold, copper and nickel. So it's a very complex picture. If we went to Mali, for example, we can see the old Wagner group pulling out, but we can now see Africa Corps, which is one of the groups which is associated with Russia, increasing its presence. In fact, it's bringing in, we can see it bringing in armoured vehicles, tanks, heavy artillery as well.
So they may have pulled out of ECOWAS, but in what ways can the establishment of collaborative efforts such as the Alliance of Sahel States that they've entered into assist in tackling this issue of terrorism for them?
Well, I think having the alliance is excellent, but the problem is they've got weak governance. They haven't got control over their territories. And so I think they really do need outside support. The support they're getting from Africa Corps is good. That's in terms of sort of fighting the terrorism, but it's probably not going to be enough. We're talking about some hundreds of troops there. I think it might be 300 to 600. That's hardly enough to fight the level of the insurgencies which they've got.
Is there a willingness for their neighbours to enter into this fight as a form of assistance, or there is fear?
Well, I think we can see it spreading. So if we look at it's spreading more towards West Africa. So if we look at Togo, there were 51 deaths in Togo through terrorism over this period. So yes, the neighbours are fearful. However, without them being willing to be able to accept the help from ECOWAS or the African Union, then it's a debate. We don't know.
And in what ways can the African Union assist in not only Burkina Faso but the Sahel?
I think one would be a peacekeeping operations. I think that'd be one way. 2 is with military support. And the third one would be with the diplomatic support as well. So there's some of the ways which they'd be able to help them.
Which are some of the terrorist groups that are responsible for the attacks that you found in the index?
So if we're looking at within the Sahel, we find that the worst group is JNIM. The number of deaths caused by JNIM last year increased by 42%. The other major group is Islamic State of West Africa. Now that's and that's the number of deaths caused by it have actually decreased as JNIM has increased. But Boko Haram, obviously off in Nigeria, northern end of Nigeria is part of the Sahel. That's also another hotspot, and Nigeria's sort of got some of the highest conflict deaths in the world. In fact, the number of deaths there were over 3,500 last year. So there'd be the major groups there. If we moved outside of there, State. It's obviously was talked about West African chapter, but it had attacks in 22 countries, or was active in 22 countries last year. And that was up from 21 countries the year before. And the other one is TTP, which is active in Pakistan, up in the Boshalan state area.
Have you seen the trend then in terms of the emergence of new terrorist groups, and can you imagine or predict that there'll be even newer groups moving forward?
Yeah, I'm not so much sure about newer groups. What does concern me is we're looking at the drone technology which is being used in, let's say, the war in the Ukraine, and it's incredibly effective. These drones are cheap too, and so as the drone technology now spreads, and we haven't seen it used in Africa to any large extent yet, But like the Ukraine, for example, this year's estimated to manufacture 2.5 million drones. So the drones start to now spread, and I imagine over the next 2 years we will start to see them being used and deployed by militias in Africa. That's likely to have a debilitating and compounding effect on conflicts there.
Does Africa have the resources to implement those types of technology? So it's not so much an emergence of new groups, but this new technology that's emerging.
Well, I think it will come about from a number of different angles. So one is the state and the ability of the state to be able to use drones, and that'll be for reconnaissance, remote attacks and such. The other will be the militias to be able to use drones. And that's more of a concern of mine, because many of these drones, they'll be manufactured by nefarious actors in different parts of the world and be sold for fairly cheap amounts. Like you can pick up a drone for some hundreds of dollars, may end up getting sold for some thousands in Africa, but each drone is basically the equivalent of a missile.
All right, the index has noted 51% of global terrorism-related deaths having taken place in 2024. That was a figure that was up from the previous one of 2023 from 48%. Do you expect these figures to further rise?
I think we will see a continuation of the same. I wouldn't predict whether it's going to rise or whether it go up. So it could go down 5%, could go up 10%. But as we're halfway through the year now, my best guess would be somewhat the same.
All right. Well, thank you so much again for your time, Steve.
Yep, look, it's my pleasure being on the show. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Steve Keleli, founder and chairman of the Institute for Economics and Peace. Thank you so much for joining us, discussing that index, the Global Terrorism Index, giving us some concerning figures in terms of the growth of terrorism in the Sahel region, Burkina Faso being the most affected or the worst affected in terms of the figures that we're seeing in that country. Well, we make our way to the next, and that's the final hour of Africa Rise and Shine. It's going to be 8 o'clock in just a bit. And if it's your birthday on this 24th of June, let's share with you how many famous people are also saying happy birthday, or people are saying happy birthday to Lionel Messi, the Argentine soccer striker, also known as the GOAT. He was born in 1987 in Rosario, Argentina. I didn't know he was that young. But anyway, that's who you share your birthday with. Also, Yuli Inkster, American golfer, born back in 1960, achieved 7 LPGA major titles as well as the US Open in 1999 and 2002. He was born in New Jersey on this day. Claudia Sheinbaum, Mexican scientist and politician, President-elect of Mexico 2024, was born in 1962 in Mexico City. And you also share a birthday with Gautam Adani, Indian businessman who is India's second richest person, born in 1962 in Ahmedabad. I hope that will give you also some riches coming your way. Manifest that. You share a birthday with a second richest person in India. Well, it's 8 o'clock Central African time. My name is Asanda Beda.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. Coming up shortly, we'll be taking a look at International Women in Diplomacy Day. And what is the state of women in diplomacy? How well are they doing? How represented are they? We're going to be unpacking that and other stories after the news with Jwalane Tulo-Ngwete.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. 3 Kenyan policemen have been charged with the murder of an online activist whose death in custody prompted protests. The officers appeared in a court in Nairobi along with 3 other people. Joeli Khodi has the details.
Kenya's public prosecutor has recommended that 2 police officers who were on duty the night Albert Ojwang died in their custody and their commander face murder charges. The other accused are inmates who were in detention at the Central Police Station in Nairobi on the same night. An autopsy found that Ojwang had been assaulted, contradicting an earlier police report that claimed he died from self-inflicted injuries. His death has sparked public outrage in Kenya as it marks 1 year since the deadly protests led by Gen Zs opposed to tax hikes.
The army in the Democratic Republic of Congo says it has signed a new accord with neighbouring Uganda aimed at boosting a joint military campaign against a rebel group, the Allied Democratic Forces. Over the last 3 decades, the deployment of Ugandan troops has often been controversial. Officials in Kampala say the focus has always been on defeating rebels. The last two groups of the South African troops returning from the SADC peacekeeping mission in the DRC are expected to arrive today. Yesterday, the 7th group arrived at the Bromfish International Airport in the Free State province. The group of 255 soldiers will begin with the demobilization process at Tempe Military Base in Bloemfontein. So far, 5 groups have completed the demobilization process. The SANDF's Major General Godfrey Tulare.
The staff that is facilitating the members that are coming back are going to come separately outside of the 2 flights that are remaining. That will be a separate arrangement. You recall that there still is some logistics that must take place. As we have indicated initially that there is some equipment that must come back, which is currently in Tanzania, but that equipment is going to be shipped to South Africa. So you still need the bodies that are going to be doing all this other administration.
The head of the UN's Children Agency, UNICEF, has warned of a worsening crisis for hundreds of thousands of children who fled Sudan's war in eastern Chad. With over 700,000 children escaping into neighbouring countries, they account for over 60% of all refugee arrivals. The BBC's Camilla Mills has the details.
On a visit to the region, Catherine Russell described harrowing accounts from those who have fled killings, mass rapes and homes being burned. She said the most vulnerable children were bearing the brunt of both the war in Sudan and lack of essential services for those who have escaped. Many of them are malnourished, out of school, and at serious risk of exploitation and disease. Ms. Russell said Chad is already stretched beyond capacity. It has the 4th highest child mortality rate in the world, and humanitarian funding is falling critically short.
The status of a ceasefire between Israel and Iran is unclear hours after it was announced by US President Donald Trump. Israeli emergency services say 3 people have been killed in Iranian strikes. Before that, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said there had been no agreement on a cessation of military operations, but added that Tehran would not continue its strikes if Israel stopped its attacks. The BBC's Jay Kwan reports.
We are still waiting to hear from the Israelis on this official confirmation of a ceasefire and President Trump's timeline of that ceasefire. It's a little bit confusing because he said the ceasefire will begin at around midnight in Washington time, but we're seeing from the Iranian side is that the ceasefire should be in effect now. But at the same time, we're seeing reports of Iranian missiles still bombarding the Israeli side. And Israel has been, of course, heavily bombarding the Iranian side. So we'll really need to see this ceasefire will maybe precarious at this point. But of course, there is a lot of motivation, of course, and reasons for Iranians and the Americans to finally walk away and bury the hatchet here.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo-Webe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, the player of the series, Hayley Matthews, delivered the standout performance for the West Indies to clinch the T20 series. Today marks the 30th anniversary of that crucial occasion when the Springboks clinched the first Rugby World Cup. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
6 minutes past 8 Central African time. Let's go to Russia now, Iran and UN. So Russia, China and Pakistan have introduced a draft resolution urging an immediate and unconditional ceasefire in the conflict between Israel, Iran and now the United States. Russian Ambassador Vasily Nebenzia made the announcement during an emergency session of the Security Council on Sunday in response to the U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. The meeting heard from the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres that the bombing of those nuclear sites marked a perilous turn in the region. Iran's ambassador accused both Israel and the USA of destroying diplomacy as Israel's envoy heaped praise on U.S. President Donald Trump for taking decisive action when others had failed to do so. Sherwin Bryce Peace reports on the different positions in the Security Council as the world awaits a promised Iranian military response.
Council also heard from the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, who argued that a window of opportunity to return to dialogue and diplomacy still existed, as he appealed for IAEA inspectors to have full access to Iran's nuclear sites to establish the facts on the ground after the US strikes. Rafael Grossi is Director General of the IAEA.
Armed attacks on nuclear facilities should never take place and could result in radioactive releases with great consequences within and beyond the boundaries of the state, which has been attacked. I therefore again call on maximum restraint. Military escalation threatens lives and delays a diplomatic solution for the long-term assurance that Iran does not acquire a nuclear weapon. It also threatens the global non-proliferation regime.
Russia, China and Pakistan introduced a draft resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire while asserting the need for a diplomatic track on Iran's nuclear program. Moscow's envoy went further, railing against the intelligence that led to the US strike after a March assessment by the US intelligence community found no evidence that Iran had authorized a nuclear weapons program despite its highly enriched uranium stockpile. Trump dismissed that assessment, saying his Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, was wrong, as Russia's Ambassador Vasily Nebenzia weighed in.
Today, let me remind you that back in 2003, in this very chamber, the U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell waved around a test tube, justifying Washington's plans to invade the territory of another sovereign state, only to having waged decades of chaos onto its people to not find any WMDs there. Today's situation is no different in substance to the one we saw in 2003. Again, we're being asked to believe the US's fairy tales to once again inflict suffering on millions of people living in the Middle East. This cements our conviction that history has taught our US colleagues nothing.
Countries here called for restraint and the need for a diplomatic path, while some questioned the legality of the attacks on Iran. Listen to Sierra Leone's Ambassador Michael Imran Kanu.
The use of force is among the most serious matters before this Council. Article 2.4 of the Charter obliges all member states to refrain, and I quote, from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, end of quote. In this instance, we note with concern that the strikes were conducted without Council authorization, nor was there a clear invocation of the right of self-defense under Article 51 in response to or an imminent armed attack.
Pakistan's envoy Asim Iftikhar Ahmed condemned US and Israeli actions against Iran, calling the targeting of nuclear facilities a breach of international law.
Pakistan has joined China and Russia in circulating a draft resolution. Among other things, this resolution calls for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire, urges all parties to refrain from further escalation, demands the urgent protection of civilians and civilian infrastructure, and supports a diplomatic path forward on the Iranian nuclear issue that is acceptable to all parties.
Israel, for its part, called the US action a righteous act. Listen to Ambassador Danny Danon.
The United States, the leader of the free world,
removed the greatest existential threat facing the free world. Just like our Operation Rising Lion, this was not a war of choice. This action was a necessity. It was a righteous act for the United States, for Israel, for the Middle East, and for the world. So the entire world should say on record today, here and now, thank you. Thank you to the United States for removing the greatest threat to global security.
Iran's envoy Amir Saeed Iravani accused the Council of being hollow and powerless in preventing war and again asserted Tehran's inherent right to self-defense.
All measures deemed necessary at our disposal to protect our people, our sovereignty, territorial integrity, national and vital interests, and our peaceful nuclear program in accordance with international law. Once again, I would like to remind this esteemed body of its legal and moral obligation. If this Council and the United Nations built to maintain international peace and security fail to act at this decisive moment, they will forever lose their credibility and relevance.
And as the world waits, Iran and Israel continue to exchange missile barrages, while the U.S. State Department issued a worldwide warning to Americans traveling internationally to exercise increased caution amid escalating tensions over the U.S.'s direct involvement in this war. I'm Shervin Bryce-Pease in New York.
So, freedom of the press remains a fundamental pillar of democracy, yet around the world it's increasingly under pressure. In the digital age, journalism has gained new tools and reach, but also faces new threats. From disinformation and online harassment to surveillance and the rise of authoritarian regimes using technology to control narratives, journalists are navigating an increasingly complex environment. Well, in response, the Frederick Newman Foundation for Freedom is hosting a 2-week international seminar in Gummersbach, Germany, titled Freedom of the Press, Challenges in the Digital Age. And it brings together journalists, media experts, activists, and public figures from across the globe, including Africa, to discuss strategies for protecting press freedom. Channel Africa's Michael Mbewe is attending the seminar, and he joins us now on the line from Germany. Guten Morgen, Michael. How are you today?
Good morning, Brother Peter.
So,
good morning. Yes.
Take us inside the seminar. What are some of the themes that are already sort of unfolding?
Peter, what a wonderful, atmosphere and time here. As I'm talking to you, is 1814, so your time and our time here is the same. But what is strange is that, Peter, the weather here, I was talking to my sister Asanda at around 8 p.m. Last night. It's like in the afternoon, 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
10 o'clock. 10 o'clock is like 7 o'clock in South Africa.
Yeah.
You can see the sun, you can see, you can literally walk and there's nothing. So, but on a serious note, Peter, we know you and I, we are in the media. So the freedom of the press and the media, which is central tenet of liberal thought and fundamental liberal value. So this is about protecting what we do, because if we do not have credible platforms on which we can communicate and share ideas, free thought cannot survive, and more importantly, flourish and spread across the world. So what is happening here is about, we are learning about the right of freedom of expression, where we see misinformation and disinformation in this digital age, where everybody is almost like a journalist. You just take a picture, or you can just manipulate anything and then, send and then share, viral. Goes everywhere. So, and then also, we are also seeing a pushback from, authoritarian leaderships, where there is a lot of suppression of, the media. Peter, what I've discovered also here is that we might think that we in Africa, we are far worse. Peter, in South Africa, we are much, much, much better. The way we are conducting ourselves in the media, the openness, and how we pose questions to, those we have to hold accountable. It's a diverse of different groups of media personnel from across, Europe, Latin America. You have us as Africans, and also Asia. You also have NGOs, participants who deal with, humanitarian support in conflicts and so on. But listening to the horrible, fair tales that are shared, that they are sharing with me from Romania, from Serbia. You know what happened there in Kosovo. There was a genocide that happened. But in terms of freedom, they are also complaining about being suppressed. They're often under surveillance and followed. I was sharing this thought with my sister Asanda yesterday. Horrible, horrible. So we must say, thanks to our freedom in Africa, we are able to practice what we do. But now, the topics that are being explored here are the right to freedom of expression, which is to ensure that we and the people we serve know why freedom of media is such a precious asset central to the proper functioning of liberal democracy, democratic order. And then also part two is understanding the current media landscape, which is and it gives an opportunity to interrogate the concepts of information, content, and media, and agree on how this impacts how we talk about landscape. Scrolling very quickly, I just made quick notes, Peter, because we were not scheduled for live, but these things happen. Me and Thengi, we just said, no, let's do this. In part three, we're going to be talking about the weaponization of information, which will take us deeper, a deeper look at how to deal with the challenges and dangers confronting media professionals and non-professionals, and how to ensure their security, how to protect their freedom to investigate and publish, and how to counter the trend towards a weaponization of news by actors with a partisan agenda. We know what has happened with us in the past, months with the US, misinformation, disinformation when it comes to, the fake genocide that was being, perpetrated or being tested in the Oval Office. Part four will deal with liberal responses and themes for mobilization, so which is devoted to developing professional and political solutions for the many problems and issues addressed during the seminar. So, what professional and media organizations and political representatives do to enhance freedom of the media, improve standards and the credibility of environment in which they do their work, Peter. So in a nutshell, that is what is happening here, Peter.
Okay, and we will be crossing to you quite a bit, catching up with you almost every day. So thanks so much indeed for that first impression of looking at press freedom at this gathering.
And mind you, Peter, I'll be here for 2 weeks. So I arrived here on Saturday. I'm only returning back home on the 5th of July.
Aren't you the lucky one?
So we just, just quickly also,
we don't
because
have
we landed
time,
in Frankfurt.
unfortunately,
Oh,
brother.
no time.
All right.
Thank
We'll
you,
catch
Peter.
up tomorrow.
Peter.
Take care, my brother.
Okay, no
Cheers.
problem, brother.
Okay.
Good luck.
Bye-bye. Okay, so that's Michael Mbewe in Germany, and we'll be catching up with him frequently over the next couple of weeks or so. Let's move right on, though, because we've got a big story that we really need to be looking at seriously, and of course that's women's participation generally in life. But as the world commemorates International Day of Women in Diplomacy today, the spotlight is once again on the persistent gender gaps in global political and diplomatic leadership. Despite some progress, women remain significantly underrepresented in key decision-making roles. According to the UN Women and UN Human Rights Council, structural discrimination, entrenched gender norms, and political violence continue to limit women's full participation in diplomacy. Moreover, women who do make it into these spaces are often steered towards so-called soft portfolios, whilst critical power positions remain very male-dominated. With increasing global conflicts and a rise in authoritarian trends, the need for inclusive and diverse leadership is more urgent than ever. So how can women be better supported in diplomacy, and why does representation matter in peace building and International Relations. Well, joining us now to unpack some of these issues is Catherine Chegero, who's a program specialist on women, peace and security at UN Women South Africa Multi-Country Office. Thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's start with the significance of this day, women in diplomacy in particular. There are many issues, women issues. Why women in diplomacy?
Historically, we know that the space of diplomacy has been reserved for men for quite some time. And the Secretary General then declared 24th of June to be the International Day of Women in Diplomacy. This resolution invited member states to actually be more intentional in giving women spaces and in the diplomatic corps and in the diplomatic space. But even as we have seen this, we still have percentages where we still see that women are underrepresented. We have, for example, just in the UN space, as of last year, May, we only have 35% of women sitting in decision-making positions in New York. We have 33.3% of women sitting in decision-making positions in Vienna. We also only have 35% of women sitting in decision-making positions in Geneva. So even in the UN itself, I think we need to do a lot to be able to change this. Across the country also, we are seeing that we only have very few women who are presidents or who are in decision-making positions. So it's important for us to have a day like this to recognize the value that the women play, but also to ensure that we continue insisting that for us to achieve gender equality, then we need to make this space equal and we need to give women the opportunity to be able to lead.
So representation is one issue, but it's also an issue of women being largely deployed in what's maybe described sometimes as soft portfolios like social development or education, while ministries of defense or foreign affairs remain male-dominated. Why do these gendered divisions of labor and diplomacy persist, do you think?
It's actually, that's very interesting because when you see a portfolio, then you say that defense should be led by a man, foreign affairs should be led by a man, Ministry of Gender by a woman, Ministry of Education, social cohesion. I think that's discrimination on its own. And we do realize that we only have a very small percentage where you've seen when it comes to different portfolios where women are given that opportunity. So it's, again, we look at quality versus quantity, correct? So you say, you can argue that, but they have been given a space to lead. But then what kind of space are we looking at? You're looking at it from a family perspective, anything that needs to have family within it. But then when it comes to literally political leadership, like head of states, cabinet ministers, they're given short portfolios. But I think that's where discrimination comes in. And I think that's part of the things that we really need to push, that it's not just about quality, but we also need to look about quantity. Which spaces are these that we are opening up spaces for women to be able to actively participate in?
In conflict zones across Africa, especially countries like the DRC, Sudan, Somalia at the who've seen ongoing violence, particularly against women and girls. Do you think that women can play an important role in addressing and preventing some of these violations if they had an opportunity?
Yes, I mean, when you look at conflict, it affects women and girls. They're the most affected. And that's why we have what we call Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security, and saying that when it comes to mediation, when it comes to alternative dispute resolution, when it comes to peace building, women should play an important role in ensuring that their voices are heard. And When it comes to migration, you see that a lot of those who are affected are women and girls. And so therefore, the resolution 1325 looks at how do we make sure that we make the spaces inclusive, we make the space open so that everyone can be able to participate. But we've seen also that, yes, the space is opening up, but I think a lot needs to be done. When it comes to peacekeeping, for example, the women in the defense forces that are taken to peacekeeping, the number is still not fair. We still have a very small percentage of women in the peacekeeping missions, but they could play an important role. They could help in reducing, for example, stigma, especially to the women who've been affected. There's a different role that both men and women can play, especially when it comes to peacekeeping missions. So I think, and also when it comes to negotiation and mediations and alternative dispute resolutions and just negotiating for peace, I think they play a very important role. And we've seen women, for example, in Sudan who came out and spoke out against the conflict. We're seeing women doing amazing work in the DRC, for example. And even in South Africa, for example, we have women who, yes, they don't have the conflict, but we have like the Ghetto Shopper Mediators Network where they are playing an important role in going out to support the other countries in terms of issues of mediation as non-partisan party. So I think the space is opening up, but I think we need to be more inclusive, we need to be more intentional in ensuring that we really do advance the role of women in the different portfolios that we tend to see, if it's peace and security, if it is ending gender-based violence, if it is political leadership. I think we need to be more intentional with that.
Perhaps finally, to change things, what needs to be done and by who?
I think we need to come at it from different perspectives. We can do it from national or government or that national level. With that, we do it through changing policies, through coming up with really policies that are intentional. And like I said, quantity versus quality. So you can have 100, but what positions have you given them? When it comes to decision making, and then we can go it at community level. We look at, yes, the women in leadership, but also at grassroots level, I think the grassroots also play a very important role. We have our grandmothers who've negotiated through trade. We also have like the government policies which can now trickle down to the community. So I think we need to have a lot of male engagement. We need to have a lot of change when it comes to how we think. And that one has to do with social cohesion. How are dealing with our culture? What do we want to teach the coming up generation? We need to have intergenerational conversations, young people and all of that, yes. So we really need to ensure that as we do this, as we continue to have this conversation, it's both at national, but it's also at grassroots level. And everybody needs to be involved. I think when we talk about gender equality, we feel like we are leaving out men. No, that's. I think the narrative needs to change, and we need to correct that narrative for us to be able to move on.
Catherine, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much indeed for joining us on the program to talk about this very important issue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me, and goodbye.
Thank you. That's Catherine Chegero, who's a program specialist for Women, Peace and Security at the UN Women South Africa Multi-Country Office, speaking to us on International Women's Day in Diplomacy. And sadly, underrepresentation continues to be a key word, and also the quality of representation is something that needs to be looked at. It's time for your news headlines. Good morning, Jwalani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, 3 Kenyan policemen have been charged with the murder of an online activist whose death in custody prompted protests. The head of the UN Children's Agency, UNICEF, has warned of a worsening crisis for hundreds of thousands of children who fled Sudan's war into eastern Chad. And finally, the status of a ceasefire between Israel and Iran is unclear, hours after it was announced by US President Donald Trump. I will have details on these and other stories at 9 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
And now let's check in with the world of sports. Here's Figile Lingwati with the latest in our sports update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. We bet off with cricket news. West Indies secured a 6-wicket victory over the Proteas women in the third T20 International in Barbados, clinching the 3-match series 2-1. After Maine Smith struck an unbeaten maiden T20 half-century, scoring 95 not out of 38 balls, to help South Africa post 147 for 6, Matthews responded with a commanding knock of 65 from 50 deliveries to steer her side to victory with 9 balls to spare. In the better at the crease, Chinelle Henry showcased her hitting prowess with a 6 and 4 in the penultimate over, guiding the West Indies to a memorable 2-1 series win over the South Africans. And Super Falcons of Nigeria put in a resilient performance to hold Portugal to a goalless draw in a friendly encounter played in Lisbon on Monday evening. Despite both teams failing to find the back of the net, the contest provided plenty for head coach Justin Madugu, whose side looked organized at the back and increasingly dangerous going forward. The game kicked off with the Super Falcons donning their away colours and immediately asserting their presence. The opening 20 minutes saw both sides feel each other out, with neither able to carve out a clear-cut opportunity. After a goalless first half, the intensity ramped up in the second period. Nigeria started to grow in confidence, pushing further up the pitch in search of a breakthrough. The result extends the Super Falcons' unbeaten run in 2024 and gives Madugu more to ponder ahead of the team's next friendly against Ghana's Black Queens on the 29th of June in Morocco. Now, rugby news. Today marks 30 years since the national rugby team won the Rugby World Cup at Ellis Park in Johannesburg when they beat New Zealand 15-12 in the final. The victory became significant because it was the first sporting success for a newly democratic South Africa. The win was said to help unify the country and give the Rainbow Nation a feel-good moment to lean on for years to come. The significance of the 1995 World Cup is not lost on the incumbent and first Black Springbok captain Siya Kolisi.
I was for it, but obviously I've seen videos and I've seen the impact that it's done, not only in rugby but in South Africa in general. We all know. I think that's why people look up to the team or look to the team so much because of what happened in 1995, and I think it also started the winning for South Africa in difficult circumstances, and it also showed the spirit of South African people, especially when the one game was going to get cancelled, how people find ways to make sure that the field was right for people to play.
Since the inception of Springbok Rugby in 1891, it had only ever represented white South Africans. South African Rugby President Mark Alexander says the 1995 Rugby World Cup final was a defining moment for South Africa.
I think that was a landmark moment in our nation. It's a landmark moment. It's a moment where things change in our country, where we started the process, how strong we are when we stand together as a country. We are really stronger together as a country when we work together. And through sport has the power to bring people together. And I think that moment was a defining moment in our nation.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lingwati.
Sports. on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
And with an African perspective on the business news, here's Nosihle Zuma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good afternoon. Good morning. In your business news this hour, South Africa's Cooperative Governance Minister Velonkosi Hlabisa has highlighted the lack of revenue base for collection as one of the factors contributing to poor performance of some of the country's municipalities. This follows a report by the Auditor General which revealed that only 41 of the country's 257 municipalities achieved clean audits for the 2024-2025 financial year. Hlabisa says the well-performing municipalities are overshadowed by the majority struggling municipalities. He was speaking at a high-level dialogue in Midrand, Johannesburg, where political parties have convened as part of the ongoing review of the 1998 White Paper on Local Government.
A number of municipalities constantly fail to spend MIG and other grants allocation. Some of our municipalities are not viable as they have no revenue base for collection. As a result, they are classified as distressed, and some of them are literally bankrupt. Sometimes they are unable to pay salaries.
Oil prices have stabilized this afternoon after prices initially spiked at the opening. This morning, prices touched 5-month highs before turning negative and then recovering again. Analysts say oil prices will remain on edge as markets continue to closely watch for Iran's next move and possible escalation. U.S. airstrikes on Iran have sharply raised fears of retaliation that could target key oil infrastructure and shipping lanes. The Strait of Hormuz, a critical oil transit point, is at the center of concerns over the potential supply disruption. Your financial indicators: $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 547. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 33. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 56, and in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 09. The BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 rupee 51. Russia is 78 rubles 39. India is 86 rupees 49. China at 7 yuan 18. And in South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 99. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,366 and platinum at $1,288 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $77.79 a barrel. Now, for any business news stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipho Zuma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628.
Vue d'Afrique avec Joël Mouteba.
Alors peut-on considérer cette décision comme un désengagement durable des États-Unis vis-à-vis du développement africain ou s'agit-il d'un simple réalignement stratégique?
Bon, ça peut être les deux à la fois. Donc, au lieu de donner de l'argent à la Banque africaine de développement pour partager en vrac, ils préfèrent maintenant donc cibler les pays partenaires en Afrique. Ça, c'est pour le réalignement stratégique. Alors, et aussi, ce n'est pas un désengagement durable, mais je pense que dans les 2 ou 3 prochaines années, il veut d'abord remettre de l'ordre dans ses affaires.
Vue d'Afrique. Du lundi au vendredi de 15h à 16h, temps universel.
Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Hawa wa Afrika Kusini wenye asili ya kizungu ambao wamepewa ukimbizi huko nchini Marekani. Je, nini chanzo cha wao kuomba ukimbizi nchini Marekani?
Wenyewe hawajaomba ukimbizi. Kuna shirika fulani inaitwa AfriForum, shirika mbili za wazungu ambao wanatetea haki ya wazungu hapa, AfriForum na Solidarity. Hao walienda Marekani kufanya kampeni kusema kwamba wazungu wananyanyaswa hapa Afrika Kusini, na walivyofanya hiyo kampeni serikali iweza kuwafuatilia kujua nini ambacho mnasema kwamba mnanyanyaswa.
Kuna namna ya wao kwamba wamepoteza uraia wa Afrika Kusini, na je, endapo Trump akamaliza muda wake madarakani, uhalali wao wa kuishi nchini Marekani ukoje?
Itakuwa vigumu, kifupi itakuwa vigumu wenyewe kupoteza uraia wao.
Darubini ya Afrika 11 kamili hadi 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
South Africa's municipalities are in a dire situation because of financial pressures, weak financial control, corruption, and a lack of adequate skills. To address this, government is reviewing the 1998 local government policy that determines how municipalities are managed. The country's Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Velenkosini Hlabisa, says a one-size-fits-all approach will not work, but a different and appropriate strategy must be developed for the country's 257 municipalities. Dimakatso Leshoro has the details.
Of the 257 municipalities, only 99 received unqualified opinions and 41 municipalities achieved clean audits. And out of 8 metros, these are Category A cities in South Africa, only one got a clean audit, that is the city of Cape Town. The city of Johannesburg has one of the biggest budgets across the continent, but it failed to produce quality financial statements, pointing to a lack of skills. The shocking state of municipalities has left them unable to provide basic services like waste removal, water and electricity, and have been beset by service delivery protests. Velenkosini Hlabisa, the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, bemoaned the state of South Africa's municipalities, saying it leaves much to be desired.
We know better the state of the most of our municipalities, which leaves much to be desired. We also know that the public holds the opinion that the majority of municipalities are not doing well. Local government is where policies become services, promises become infrastructure, and governance become tangible. Local government is at the coalface of service delivery and the closest to the people. It is the sphere that must be strengthened. The geographical locations and the funding model are at the heart of the challenges in most of our municipalities. That is why our engagement throughout the process of review, one size fits all, will not be a solution. The questions that we must engage is why the situation is like this. To fix our municipalities, what needs to be done, when, and by whom.
He is spearheading a process to develop a new model of making municipalities work. His department has formulated a white paper to replace the 1998 one to explore the best way to make municipalities functional and fit for purpose.
Year after year, the audit outcomes show that few municipalities get a clean bill. There is a heavy reliance on consultants when it comes to the compilation of the annual financial statements, yet many municipalities end up with bad results on audit outcome to an extent of disclaimers and adverse outcomes. A number of municipalities constantly fail to spend MIG and other grants allocation. Some of our municipalities are not viable as they have no revenue base for collection. As a result, they are classified as distressed, and some of them are literally bankrupt.
Auditor General Tsakane Maluleke, who also took part at the event, stated that the previous white paper on local government was fantastic, if only it had been implemented.
I urge us to engage courageously on what are these barriers. Because when I read the 1998 white paper, if only the 1998 white paper had been implemented, we would not be here today. So the question I want to ask is, what are these barriers that stand between us and doing the things that are in the current white paper? Because if we do not confront them, the review process into a new white paper will lead us into a space where we currently are anyway. The 1998 white paper was fantastic. It's good to review it, but that must be followed with a very bold and courageous assessment and recommitment to implementing it. And implementing it, as I see it, is going to take the political parties genuinely thinking about whom are we deploying to take on the roles and responsibilities in the municipal space.
The public has until next Monday to make their contributions. For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakatso Leshoro in Johannesburg.
Now, it's been 30 years since South Africa's iconic Rugby World Cup victory at Ellis Park, where the Springboks defeated New Zealand 15-12 in a dramatic final. It was more than just a sporting triumph. It became a symbol of national unity in a newly democratic South Africa, offering a powerful moment of hope and pride for a divided nation. 3 decades later, the 1995 World Cup win is still remembered as a turning point that helped ignite the country's sporting journey on a global stage.
With the odds stacked against them, the 1995 Springboks pull off the seemingly impossible, beating the All Blacks and lifting the Rugby World Cup for the first time in 1995. It would become the high point for Springbok rugby for years to come. The victory, however, transcended rugby and became a bright and shining moment in the new and democratic South Africa. The significance of the 1995 World Cup is not lost on the incumbent and first black Springbok captain, Siya Kolisi.
I was 4 then. Obviously, I've seen videos and I've seen the impact that it's done, not only in rugby but in South Africa in general. We all know. I think that's why people look up to the team or look to the team so much because of what happened in 1995, and I think it also started the winning for South Africa in difficult circumstances, and it also showed the spirit of South African people, especially when the one game was going to get cancelled, how people find ways to make sure that the field was right for people to play. And I think the way this team is today, I think the way it represents South Africa, I think many of the people that wanted, things to move forward in South Africa will be very proud of how it's been, and I think we don't take for granted what we get to do, and it's changed in a way that everybody's trying to get access to rugby and make it easier in communities, and I've seen it where I come from. I come from a rugby playing community. Kids are excited. The Eastern Cape, kids are excited. They want to play the sport, and it's growing more and more. And I think, it's been great, and people feel represented in the team, which is amazing.
Since the inception of Springbok Rugby in 1891, it had only ever represented white South Africa. Ever since 1995, Springbok Rugby has become a cultural and commercial juggernaut where all South Africans feel seen and represented. SA Rugby President Mark Alexander says the 1995 Rugby World Cup final was a defining moment for South Africa.
I think that was a landmark moment in our nation. It's a landmark moment. It's a moment where things change in our country, where we started the process, how strong we are when we stand together as a country. We are really stronger together as a country when we work together. And through sport has the power to bring people together. And I think that moment was a defining moment in our nation.
The events of the day 30 years ago are ingrained in South Africans' memories. Sports Minister Gayton McKenzie, like many of his compatriots, can still recount many key moments in the World Cup final.
When Jules Krantz kicked the ball over, he kicked us into our new future. That's my fondest memory. Jules Transky, Joost van der Westhuizen, Sia Kolisi, every rugby player that plays rugby today and that played rugby previously, we owe a debt of gratitude to that team. I remember there was a ball that John Alomu came, a tackle I'll never forget, where Joost put him down on the ground. Something unheard of, because he was like a bullet train. And for me, I've seen the captain, Francois, lifting that cup. But when he lifted that cup up, a lot of things went off our shoulders. We felt lighter, we felt better, we felt the greater South Africa.
And for the future of Springbok rugby, there are 4 World Cup triumphs to learn from. But far and away the most significant is the victory that started it all back in 1995. For a young player like Morne van den Berg, the desire to add to what was begun in 1995 is the reason the Springboks play the game.
I was born 2 years after that, but I mean, even then, the stories, you even hear the stories now, like the lasting effect that it had, what that team had, what Nelson Mandela had, the great Nelson Mandela had, and then even the 27 World Cup, how big of an influence it had, and then obviously 2019, 23 is a bit more relevant when I was a bit older and you could understand what it meant a bit more. You could just see how it brought people together. And it's such a special thing to see how a game like rugby can actually unify the country's people. How it makes you believe that that you actually you can be the best in the world at something if you really want to. So yeah, I think it has been such an amazing the road, what the Springbok has done, and now that I'm in the squad, just a little bit of a glimpse of it, it's incredible. So hopefully the team can do it again in 2027.
The Springboks play the Barbarians on Saturday, a special game in the spirit of rugby that will no doubt mark an important day that happened 30 years ago. Simon Burke, SABC News, Johannesburg.
10 black rhino have been successfully translocated from South Africa to Zenave National Park in Mozambique to help secure the first founder population of the critically endangered species, where they've become locally extinct 5 decades ago. The initiative involved South Africa's Ezemvelo or KZN Wildlife, who donated the rhinos to Mozambique's National Administration for Conservation Areas, Peace Parks Foundations, and the players of the UK People's Postcode Lottery, who funded the project. Renee Heine compiled this report.
The complex operation started more than a year ago with the darting and capturing of the rhinos in KwaZulu-Natal reserves. The 5 males and 5 females were kept in bomas at the Hluhluwe Mfolozi Park in preparation for the 48-hour-long journey by road. Dumisani Zwane, head of the game capture unit at the park, says they trained the rhinos to get used to the specially designed crates, with the main aim to release strong and healthy animals.
I think we prepared for that very well because back at Mfolozi in our bomas we put them in, we did train them, so we did that, which I think helped us a lot.
The black rhino, which can weigh more than a ton, poses some particular challenges, says Kester Vickery from Conservation Solutions.
The black rhinos are probably one of the more challenging species that we work with. They react very differently to the drugs that we use. Typically they're very aggressive, so they're not as placid as white rhinos, so we need to be on our toes at all times.
The precious cargo was transported from northern KwaZulu-Natal through the Kosi Bay border post to their new home in southern Mozambique. The 400,000 hectare Zenav National Park is the country's only Big Five reserve and a key partner in the Great Limpopo Transfrontier Conservation Area. An agreement between Mozambique's Conservation Authority and Peace Parks Foundation, signed in 2015, aims to rewild the park to create a healthy ecosystem by introducing viable wildlife populations, which will attract tourists and support the livelihoods of local communities living around the park. Chief Warden at the park, Antonia Abakar, says the long civil war decimated the country's wildlife, but there's been a remarkable recovery in just a few years.
From 2016 up to now, 16 different species have been moved into Zenav National Park. In terms of relocation of game, I think about 2,400 animals were involved. But when we come up with aerial survey, some studies, it seems that population has almost doubled.
The first rhinos were successfully translocated from South Africa to the park 5 years ago. It has a population of 37 rhinos from South Africa, which includes 27 white rhinos. Increasing the number of black rhino makes it more viable to rebuild a founder population. Ignacio Chiponde, a veterinarian with the Mozambique Wildlife Alliance, says this will boost their conservation efforts.
It's a huge milestone for us as a Mozambicans to have more black rhinos here in the country. We know how emblematic, how important these animals are, how endangered these animals are at the moment. Now we are in position to join efforts in order to protect this species. It's a huge opportunity to other Mozambicans, especially the community around the park. So they also need to join forces together with the park and the government to protect such a species.
It brought great satisfaction to all involved to see the sleeping giants wake to explore their new home, with some even browsing on nearby vegetation. The rhinos will be monitored with tracking devices to ensure their security and their welfare. I'm Renee Heine for SABC News in Durban.
All right, and that's how we... it's nearly time to go. Tomorrow is a special day in Mozambique.
Mm-hmm.
It is their Independence Day. But what happens with these Independence Day, actually, it gets signed over the day before. And at midnight, that's when the Independence Day kicks off. So actually today is when Mozambique was handed over to the Mozambicans by the Portuguese authorities. So today is actually technically the Independence Day, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So
And I'm sure we'll be having stories for you on that tomorrow. Maybe even analysis on our Africa Wrap when we zoom into a certain area of the continent. We'll see how that goes. But from today, we thank you so much for having tuned in and listened to us or been joining us for the past 3 hours. We'll do this again tomorrow from 6 till 9. Of course, stay with Channel Africa as more programming continues. After Rise and Shine is on the move with Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa Tao. But from me, Asanda Beda.
And for me, Peter Ndoro, have an awesome day, everybody. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Top stories: Asaba public anger spilling over in Kenya, and Trump says a ceasefire between Israel and Iran is now in effect. Good morning, I'm Jolani Tulongwebe. Public anger is boiling over in Kenya following the death of blogger Albert Ojwang in police custody and the recent shooting of a street vendor during protests. 3 officers have been charged over Ojwang's death. Channel Africa's Nairobi correspondent Alex Kiari says there are calls for the Deputy Inspector General to be included in the investigations.
Members of the public and all other human rights organizations have been calling for the prosecution and a fair look and approach at the whole issue and the exclusion of the Deputy Inspector General of Police, Eliud Lagat, is the one that is raising even more questions because they expect that him having allegedly ordered the arrest of the late Ojwang makes him a bigger prime suspect in the whole murder case. But for now, the anger is being driven by the fact that only the small fish is being fried.
The last 2 groups of South African troops returning from the SADC peacekeeping mission in the DRC are expected to arrive tomorrow. The 7th group arrived at the Bromfish International Airport yesterday in the Free State province. The group of 255 soldiers will begin the demobilization process